So today I wanted to make a tier list on every killer in Dead by Daylight and how much synergy their power has with their own unique perks. This isn't really a perk strength tier list, but rather one that looks at the opportunity cost for each killer's teachable perks and asks the question of, can this killer's actually interact with or make use of it? For example, Pain Resonance is one of the best perks in the game, but I'm of the opinion that it doesn't have synergy with the artist power specifically. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to consider how I would play these killers, or at least how I understand their power use case scenarios, because I feel like I understand how every killer is played on a at least beginner to moderate level, and won't get caught up on character-specific text that only the most dedicated mains truly understand how to utilize, aside from Deathslinger, but Deathslinger I don't think really changes much with his perks in regard to that, and we'll get to that when we do get there. My main focus will be pointing out what the power is designed to do and every effect the power possesses so that we can holistically understand if the perks have any synergy at all. And the tiers here are pretty self-explanatory. If all the perks have good synergy with the killer's power, then it goes in great. Then if two of the perks have good synergy, then it goes in some synergy, and then down to some perks that just straight up have anti-synergy and they just don't pair very well with the power at all. Also, even though the perks are considered base kit now, I do hold the digital licenses to Myers and Pinhead, so I'll be considering their perk synergies even if they're not unique to the characters themselves nowadays. And for the sake of some arguments, I will consider add-on pairings to potentially save some synergies, but perks that have good ones won't need an add-on to save them, so they won't always be a consideration. I'll bring them up as talking points, but they won't usually always influence where I place them on this tier list overall. And also, in case you have no attention span, here's the final tier list, and the rest of the video is justifications for the placement of each killer. This isn't really ordered necessarily, it's just if they're in this tier, then I think they're in this tier. And if that all makes sense to you, then I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it, starting with the Trapper. The Trapper comes equipped with Agitation, Brutal Strength, and Unnerving Presence, and I think that Agitation and Brutal Strength are two perks that actually work really well with his power. And if we start with Agitation, making it so that you move faster while carrying a survivor, this basically means that you can carry a survivor into a location that you can defend really easily with the Trapper, and of course the most infamous thing being Basement Trapper, but any killer that wants to camp basement will usually put on Agitation in their build. It just so happens that the Trapper is best and probably only really usable when he's camping out basement, and being able to force the basement hooks with Agitation makes it like a really great synergy with his power, specifically considering how you want to use the Trapper. And then Brutal Strength, I think actually has decent synergy as well, because when the Trapper is in chase and he doesn't have traps available, it's better for him to be able to clear pallets and walls quicker, because then he's able to then restart a chase more quickly. So even though it's not something that's directly related to his power, the regular sluggishness of his power makes it so that he can save time breaking out breakable walls, breaking down pallets, kicking generators, and then going around and setting up the traps as the game progresses. So it's actually really good. I think for Trapper, I think both of these perks are really good, and that's why I think I'm going to put them up in good synergy, but the last perk, Unnerving Presence, doesn't have quite as great synergy with his overall power, because I think that Unnerving Presence, it makes it so that skill checks are harder to hit, and Trapper's power doesn't have anything in it that influences skill checks. You're not the doctor, so you're not really getting good use out of this perk when you're playing the Trapper. It doesn't really synergize with this power. Now, it doesn't have anti-synergy, it's not a bad perk, but it's just something that doesn't really work for him anyway, and so there's no reason for it to exist in conjunction with his power, so it's just a nothing perk. But then the other two are already decent enough to the point where I can say, yeah, his perks mostly have good synergy with his power. Next up, we have the Wraith, who comes equipped with Bloodhound Predator and Shadowborn. There are arguments you can make on how the Wraith benefits from each of these perks in a sort of tangential sense. Being able to see blood from further away and tracking survivors down that way, even after their scratch marks have expired, makes the Bloodhound perk a little bit better. There was even a point in the background footage that I'm recording now where I couldn't find a survivor right away, and so while I was in power, I found their blood through Bloodhound, and even though Bloodhound can be a detrimental perk, because I am the Wraith, I was able to close the distance down to that survivor a little more quickly. Now, Granted, if I had kept walking in that direction and I had found the blood normally anyway, I would have just done the same thing with the power, so it's not like the Wraith and his power necessarily interacts with Bloodhound in a way that changes a whole lot of his gameplay. And I feel like something similar can be said about Shadowborn, where if you get blinded at a pallet, then you gain the burst of movement speed, which makes it so that you can follow up on attacks without having to recloak and uncloak again. So maybe there's, again, something to be said there about not having to use your power, not having to use Wraith form to catch people with it when you get blinded at a pallet. But ordinarily, the way that you play Wraith is that when there's a pallet that's down or a pallet that gets dropped, either it gets dropped because you uncloaked and you swung through, and then you recloak and kick it, and then immediately start chase again. It just feels like Shadowborn doesn't do a whole lot for this killer in that regard. I think that other M1 killers, like even Trapper, might get better use out of Shadowborn in a build, because if he goes to kick a pallet with Brutal Strength and then gets blinded, then the blind isn't really necessarily the end of the world anyway, so it would help him regain the chase and apply more pressure and save time while he has traps down. Now, I think that Shadowborn also just kind of has the caveat of being a perk that's really hard to activate anyway, so it is kind of like a perk strength thing in that regard. But even if you're trying to say, well, can Wraith get any use out of it? It's like, yeah, he can, but the use cases don't really work for him, especially because he has an add-on that just makes him break pallets faster anyway. Like, you're not really wanting to get blinded. You're not wanting to get blinded as any killer, to be honest with you, but I think that the Wraith already having innate haste built into his kit and movement speed built into his kit uniquely benefits less from Shadowborn, because you're already moving so damn fast anyway that it won't really make much of a difference if you're just good at tracking survivors. Same with Predator. Predator is a weird one, because when you cloak, you immediately gain value from this perk, because when you cloak, you immediately drop chase with survivors, and so you get to see their aura through the wall and are able to track what direction they're running. But again, if you're already in chase with somebody and you already know where they are because they've just dropped a pallet and ran around a corner, and then you cloak to kick the pallet, it's not like it's assuming no object permanence, really. I think that Predator might be better on some killers that have higher mobility, like the Nurse gets really good use out of it because you blink instantaneously and you might overshoot a blink and need to know where the survivor's running to, and that's where Predator really comes in handy. And Wraith, I don't think, is a killer that when you actually activate this power by activate it by using his power, is one that's like, oh no, where did the survivor go? I've closed my eyes for 2 seconds and I have no object permanence. It's like it's not a perk that the way that Wraith plays is so fundamental that it is not a perk that he really necessarily benefits from. He does get some benefit from it, but again, I just don't think that there's a whole lot. It's kind of a little to no synergy category for me, and I'm going to keep him down there as well. Now, the Hillbilly, I think, actually has 2 perks that he works with really well, and that is Enduring and Tinkerer. Now, normally with Billy, you're shredding through pallets and you're zooming around the backs of them and getting those good Billy curves and everything like that. And that's standard. That's bog standard kind of Billy practice. And so you're usually avoiding pallets for the most part anyway. But if somebody stuns you while you're charging your chainsaw, or if somebody stuns you while you're actually running in a chainsaw sprint, because I have had that happen, I've seen that happen as well, then you're able to recover from that stun so much quicker and get your chainsaw up immediately afterwards. And because you're able to get your chainsaw up so much more quickly when you have Enduring, it actually synergizes really well with this power, because now the survivors stunned you, and then suddenly they just make 0 distance because you either threaten to break the pallet or curve around the back of the obstacle to catch them immediately, and it saves you so much time, and you just immediately zone the survivor with this insta-down power. So Enduring with Billy's power can be really good. It's not that you always are going to be getting use out of it, but when the use case scenario brings itself up, I think that Billy is one of the strongest users of Enduring in the game. Now, Enduring is kind of a cheesy perk, and I think that it is problematic to some extent, but that's another topic for another day. We're just kind of talking about how the power works with the perk directly, and same with Tinkerer. Tinkerer also just works fantastically with Billy's power. you get information on, hey, this generator has high progress. You should go over here. Oh, and also, they can't hear your terror radius when you're flying at them. You can only hear the chainsaw when you're flying at them. And you get this undetectable effect for 14 seconds on a killer that has an insta-down power that can go across the entire map in a matter of even fewer seconds. Unless it's like an indoor map, Billy gets so much value out of Tinkerer. And even then, if it is an indoor map and you sneak around a corner and then back rev somebody, like Tinkerer just gets so much value anyway. Like, this killer is uniquely really good at using this perk. I can't think of many others in this game that have the mobility and the immediate threat that they can use to properly use Tinkerer. I mean, I like running Tinkerer on a variety of killers, but I think that Billy is probably one of the best users of the perk in the game, especially when you consider the Apex Muffler add-on that masks his chainsaw sound when you're outside of his terror radius. So Tinkerer pops, and then suddenly he's silent killer. He just shows up and insta-downs you at that generator, and if he misses, he's immediately a threat because he's Hillbilly. So there's a lot to be said about how strong this killer is with this perk, and I think that when you combine Enduring and Tinkerer, he's pretty darn good in terms of synergy. Then you have Lightborn. Lightborn is a perk that doesn't really benefit any one killer more than anybody else. I think that if you were to say anything for Hillbilly, it's good when someone tries to blast mine you, because you still get stunned when you kick the generator, but you don't get blinded. And when you get blast mined, the blind effect then reveals the aura of the person that tried to blast mine you. And so you can then turn around and see for 10 seconds where their aura is, and you're like, oh, okay, you're over there, let me just chainsaw at you. So there is a unique use case scenario there for you, again, because of the strength of Billy's power and because of the immediate threat that it provides, and especially because I think a lot of people know that Billy is particularly good with barbecue and chili, long-range aura reading perks, and because Lightborn is technically an aura reading perk, it has like a little bit of synergy that goes on there. And also not being able to get blinded at pallets is nice, especially if you're like charging them up or kicking them and then want to chase the survivor immediately afterwards. Just being able to keep your eyes up constantly is a benefit of the perk. I don't think that the power necessarily gets more or less use out of Lightborn, so to speak, and in a lot of cases, survivors don't blind you at pallets anyway. They're more likely to try and blind you when you go to pick up a survivor, and there's not a whole lot to be said there about it doing anything more for the power necessarily. So I don't think that every one of his perks is great. I think that Lightborn is just a general problematic but decent perk. And then Enduring and Tinkerer work really well on him. So I'm going to put him up in good synergy with the Trapper as well. Next up, we have the Nurse. The Nurse has a Nurse's Calling, Strider, and Thanatophobia. A Nurse's Calling is really good on the Nurse. Who would have frickin' thought? Within 32 meters, you see the auras of anybody that's healing, and there was a game that I played recently on the family residence who had Sloppy Butcher, Colrophobia, Nurse's Calling, and Distressing. And so it was a full slugging build. Every time that you tried to go and pick up a slug, she would see your aura and can immediately teleport on top of you and knock you down, and we were all like 4-man slugged for the full 4-minute duration. I mean, I abandoned the match eventually because when you get slugged 3 times in a row, then you do get the option to abandon. And that wasn't a whole lot of fun, but I know that's also part of the Dead by Daylight game design presently. But, that match highlighting, and also the match that I have in the background highlighting that a Nurse's Calling can get a lot of value on people that are overly altruistic, that are trying to heal a whole ton. Because in the match that I played on Shattered Square, I would go and I would tag somebody and then I would knock them down, and then I would look around for somebody that was trying to flashlight save, and then there was somebody that was trying to flashlight save, so I'd blink on top of them and hit them, and then I'd turn around and then I'd see the auras of the people healing the person that I had knocked down because I couldn't pick them up because of the flashlight save, so I could teleport back on top of them, and it just allowed me to generate so much pressure because of my instantaneous mobility. So the Nurse is really good with aura perks. We already know this. Nowhere to Hide is easily one of her best perks in the entire game, but a Nurse's Calling also fits into a similar category because she can play very hit and run and play in a very fluid manner that punishes people who try to heal a lot throughout the game. Thanatophobia also falls into a similar category, I feel, in the sense that she can spread injuries so quickly. And even though she's not like the Legion or the Plague, who are killers that basically encourage people to stay injured because of the nature of their powers, she still has the ability to get use out of it because she can stack injuries so quickly. A lot of teams that are unprepared against her, that don't know how to play the counterplay against the nurse, which, if you're curious, the counterplay is to split up and play edge map, and when you get chased down, then you know, there's some 1v1 stuff that you can do there by trying to run into her or trying to like throw off your movement, break line of sight, that sort of thing. But most people don't know that. Most people don't know how to play against the nurse, and a lot of good nurse players will just make that impossible because they know all these counterplays already. But in those scenarios, in most games that you play, Thanatophobia gets a lot of value for nurse because she can stack that 4-stack pretty quickly. I'd say like in 75% of your matches, you're going to be getting good value with Thana on the nurse. And then you have Strider. Strider is not something that benefits her specifically or benefits much of anybody outside of maybe like the Spirit or the Dark Lord when they're in bat form, if you have a really hard time tracking where survivors are. And for that reason, I can't really say that there's much synergy with the nurse's power specifically. It's just kind of there, I guess. It's not something that she benefits or detriments from necessarily, but I think that in terms of overall perk value, she'd want something that gives her more aura rating or more anti-heal options, and Strider's just not really a perk that does that for her. Now, I know that I talked about how Thanatophobia can be good on the nurse, but I think that in the use case scenarios where you're just knocking one person down at a time and you're not actually able to stack up injuries because you are having a lot of these sort of solo 1v1s as the nurse, then Thanatophobia doesn't necessarily get good value to begin with. So I'm going to say that there's some synergy to be had here. I don't think that they're nearly as clear-cut good examples as Agitation, Brutal Strength on the Trapper or Tinker and Enduring on the Hillbilly, but they still are positive use case scenarios, and so I'm going to keep this inside of some synergy and leave it at that. The next up, we have the Shape, or Myers. Myers is a weird one. I was thinking initially that he didn't have really any synergy with his perks, but the more that I thought about it, between Dying Light, Save the Best for Last, and Play with Your Food, although I got those alphabetically out of order, it's fine. Let's start. There is like some value with his perk, so let's start with Dying Light, right? Dying Light, I think, is a perk that uniquely benefits from killers that force you to do a secondary task. Something like Singularity with EMPs, or even the Knight when he chases people off with the guards, or off the top of my head, other things like Onryo having to return tapes. Because you are forcing survivors to do a secondary task that takes them away from healing and takes them away from generator repairs, those are the killers that usually tend to synergize the best with Dying Light. And because Myers is a killer that doesn't have that sort of secondary interactive effect in his power, he's not one that stands to benefit a whole lot from Dying Light. And I also think that because Myers is such a heavy 1v1 killer, I mean, he can do 1v4 pretty easily because of his ability now, but because he's a killer that's like, I'm going to stalk as quickly as possible, I'm going to Evil Incarnate as quickly as possible, I'm going to down this person as quickly as possible, and keep moving my way through the rest of the survivors as quickly as possible, you don't really get a whole lot of value out of Dying Light in the strongest parts of this, or the regular parts of this killer's power. Like, Dying Light's just kind of a good effect at the end of the day, because you can snowball and you can get hooks really quickly. You just don't get much beyond that, right? And that's fine. Like, I think that it's just a perk that just has little to no synergy with Myers specifically, even if it's a perk that can be used by others in the roster. Then you have Play With Your Food, and I think Play With Your Food is uniquely beneficial to Myers because you can use Stalker mode to sneak up on people, usually at the start of the game especially. You can sneak up on a group of people and find them, and then find the Obsession, chase the Obsession briefly, and then immediately get that haste rolling at the start of the game. And because you have the Stalker effect, you don't even have to, you can be in Stalker mode and start a chase, stalk them, gain juice for your next Evil Incarnate mode, and then be like, all right, cool, now that I've got a stack off of you and I got Stalker juice off of you, I can go and use that to then boost movement speed on my next Slaughtering Strike, for my evil incarnate mode. And that is a really powerful effect that works really well with the power, because haste effects also increase the movement speed of any sort of movement speed effect on a killer. That includes your lunge distance, that includes, like Bubba, for example, using his chainsaw benefits from haste because then he moves faster while in chainsaw sweeps. And so it's the same with Myers. When you're in evil incarnate mode and you have that haste from play with your food allows you to catch people more readily. Then you have save the best for last. And initially I thought, he's an M2 insta-down killer, like who really cares about save the best for last? But in reality, you're not going to be in evil incarnate mode all the time. And so being able to actually make your non-evil incarnate half stronger by getting basic attacks while in pursuer mode, by getting basic attacks even while in stalker mode, and also being able to insta-down the obsession while you have your M2 up and only losing 2 stacks from that hit instead of 4 like you would with 2 regular basic attacks, makes this killer a lot more deadly in both forms when you're using it simultaneously. Like, it is something that you can use to make him more strong in both aspects. Now, also because you can instantly kill the obsession if they're on death hook, and you don't lose a stack for that because it's not considered a special attack, it's just considered a Mori effect. You can keep your stacks a lot better with Myers as well in the late game. Now, are you always going to get value out of this perk, and are you always going to be M1ing people? Well, no. Because you have Slaughtering Strike, you're more likely to use that as your main damaging source, and so Save the Best for Last actually does lose a little bit of value because of how often you are likely to use an M2 ability. And so it's possible that you only get 2 stacks at a time before you have Slaughtering Strikes charged, and then you find the Obsession and knock them down immediately with it. And even then, if you're using Slaughtering Strike, you're not getting value out of Save the Best for Last anyway. So it's like, in concept, there are steps that you can do to get value out of Save the Best for Last that sound good on paper, but the actual execution has so many little steps and caveats and exceptions is the word that I'm looking for, to the point where you don't really have great synergy with Save the Best for Last, but when you do have it and get good value out of it, it has some synergy. So I'm going to put this up with the Nurse in the sense that you can make it work with Myers. Now we have the Hag, who I will say is probably one of the best users of all 3 of her perks, entirely because the Hag revolves around a camping playstyle, and her perks are all camping encouraged because they are hexes. The Hag sets up a spiderweb of traps around points of interest across the map. And what are hexes but a bunch of little points of interest? But not only that, each of these perks also is uniquely suited to benefiting the Hag herself. Somebody tries to go off of a gen to cleanse your totems, and then you catch them at a totem, Hex Ruin destroys that gen. Somebody tries to go for an unhook while you're far away, but then they trigger a trap while they're leaving the hook. You get stacks to Devour Hope a lot more easily, again, because you can also defend that totem. And then somebody goes for tries to find your totems, or tries to find their allies that have been hooked as well, and then Hex the Third Seal just adds to the chaos that this killer can have. Now, the Third Seal's not as quite as strong of a perk compared to Ruin and Devour Hope, admittedly, but because of how it encourages a camping playstyle and how Third Seal can have that effect of hiding allies when they're on hooks for the survivors, I think the Hag is actually really uniquely suited to have great synergy with her perks. Now, granted, they are Hex perks, so they do get cleansed pretty quickly, but I'm still thinking, in the way that the Hag uses her power, what is the best case of her power? Well, I mean, like the most common use case of her power, I guess, or designed way to use it. It's a camping playstyle. You set traps, you make it so that somebody can't access a part of the map, and you have 3 hexes as your adept perks. I mean, that's just an incredible combo right there. So I'm going to put her up in great synergy because she just works really well with every single one of them, and I can't say that there's a whole lot of other killers that really reach that same level, but we'll get to those when we get to them. Now we have the Doctor between Monitor and Abuse, Overcharge, and Overwhelming Presence. Overcharge is the easiest one to talk about, where it gives a difficult skill check after the Doctor kicks a generator. And because of the madness tiers and the way that the Doctor works, that skill check becomes a lot harder to hit, and so you're more likely than any other killer in the game to get value out of overcharge because of the way that the Doctor uniquely messes up with skill checks in the game. I wish that there were more killers that had this capability. I know that the Blight has like an add-on that messes with skill checks, but I think the Doctor's the only one that messes with skill checks directly, and that's why overcharge is a really good perk on him specifically as well. This game that I played for the footage as well went on so incredibly long, but I think that a lot of it ended up being because I was able to camp out a generator with overcharge and just get information whenever somebody touched that generator, and that worked out really nicely for me. So I'm glad that I had overcharge in my build when I was doing this kind of adept challenge with him. Now we move on to monitor and abuse. Monitor and abuse, it has such a weird synergy with the Doctor. You can either say that it's great or it's terrible. I'm erring on the side of it being not so great because that first effect of how your terror radius is 25% smaller when you're not in chase really damages his ability to use his static blast ability. You're not in chase for maybe about half of the game when you're playing as killer, especially one that has like low mobility, I should say. And because you're so low mobility as a killer, then you're not in chase the entire match, then you're going to have a 24-meter terror radius, which makes your static blast smaller, which makes it harder to find survivors and add madness to them, especially when you want to tier up that madness quicker for this killer specifically. So, you know, Doctor doesn't benefit from monitor and abuse nearly as much as other killers might, although there is a funny build that you can run on him that actually does synergize really well with it, and that's when you run the double comm add-ons. This is what I was talking about in the intro, where some add-ons can save a synergy. When you run double comm add-ons and you run monitor and abuse, I think you have like a 10-meter terror radius, because monitor and abuse takes out 8, and then I think the Carter's Notes comm takes out another 8, so that's minus 16. And then I think the second one takes out 4, so you're at a 12-meter terror radius with the Doctor when you use Static Blast at the start of a match. And so you're a tiny terror radius Doctor, and you can jump scare and sneak up on people a lot more quickly because of an add-on pairing that you have with Monitor and Abuse. So there is something really funny that you can do there by basically subverting expectations. And then when you get into chase, your terror radius is massive, and when you have your static blast back up, your terror radius is even bigger than ever before, and it kind of balances out the negative effect in that way of monitor and abuse by letting you have a massive terror radius, tagging everybody in a huge area with your terror radius, and then being able to sneak up on them with a tiny terror radius along the way. So there is like some slight synergy to be had there, but you do have to run a specific add-on combo to make the most use out of it. I think there's also an argument to be said that, oh, by having a smaller static blast, you have a smaller area of effect to find survivors in, which is kind of okay, but I'd rather have the larger radius search to find them. Like, that just seems easier for me in that regard. So I'm going to say that that has some synergy, but like it's little to no synergy, really. Almost anti-synergy, but it's really little to no synergy because of the add-on combo. And then you have Overwhelming Presence. Now, Overwhelming Presence makes it so that whenever a survivor is exhausted, they reveal their auras, and whenever they use an item, they become exhausted. So these effects do stack. If they use a flashlight, they become exhausted, and then you reveal their aura. And that's kind of cool, I guess. That's kind of all right. But the problem with the Doctor specifically using this perk is that you knock out that item effect by giving somebody Madness 3. Because when somebody's in Madness Tier 3, they can't use items anymore. So you only get the aura reading when they become exhausted off of using Sprint Burst, Lithe, whatever, what have you. And the aura reading is nice, and being able to know that using an exhaustion perk is nice. But that's just the perk working for itself. That's not actually the Doctor's power having a combo with the perk. Or, having a combo with the perk. It's just the perk kind of doing its own thing and working for itself. So, I gotta say, like, again, little to no synergy, even almost anti-synergy with Overwhelming Presence because it knocks out half of its effect. But then because Monitor and Abuse does have some synergy because Overcharge is a really good perk for the Doctor, I'm going to go ahead and put him in some synergy, even though it is barely saved by an add-on combo. I could argue for little to no synergy for him, but because Overcharge is so good, Monitor and Abuse can be funny, and Overwhelming Presence just like a whatever perk half the time. I'm going to put him right in the middle of the road there. Now, a character that does have anti-synergy with her perks is the Huntress. So the Huntress comes equipped with Huntress's Lullaby, Territorial Imperative, and Beast of Prey, which everyone knows that these are probably the 3 worst adept perks out of any killer in the game. But again, this isn't really a perk strength tier list. This is more of a, how well does this perk interact with the killer's power? And I'd still say that the Huntress has anti-synergy, because the Huntress has... Okay, let's start with Huntress's Lullaby. Huntress's Lullaby is a perk that makes it so that every time that you hook a survivor, you gain a stack, and it makes skill checks progressively faster, and there's less time between the warning sound and the actual appearance of the skill check itself, until at 5 stacks they're basically silent. And then every time that a survivor misses a skill check while this hex is up, they suffer a higher regression event. And I still think that even with all of that, and even though this is a hex perk that you can technically defend from range because you are the Huntress does not have anything in her kit that uniquely benefits from this. There's no... again, the Doctor is the skill check character that would greatly benefit from this, and even then, some early skill check Doctor builds, which have had a lot of iterations and changes over time, used to have Huntress's Lullaby in it quite a bit. And even then, Doctor doesn't really like this quite as much as Colrophobia or something along those lines. And because of that, there's nothing that Huntress's Lullaby does for the Huntress herself that uniquely benefits her. I mean, it's an effect, it's something, but it's not a good one. It's not one that you would say, oh yeah, that's something that benefits her from her ability to throw hatchets from a distance kind of thing. Again, she synergizes really well with things like Darkness Revealed or even Iron Maiden, because she can reload faster or reveal people when she reloads. Barbecue and Chili because of long range abilities, and also the Lethal Pursuer because of the Glowing Concoction add-on that she has. And those would be good perks for her to synergize with, but she doesn't have that synergy. Huntress's Lullaby is really bad. And then you have Beast of Prey, which is anti-synergy with her, because when you gain Bloodlust, you gain Undetectable for 40 seconds. But the thing is that you're throwing hatchets with this character so often that you don't get benefits from Bloodlust. You're using your power frequently enough to not actually be able to activate Beast of Prey. And so even though Beast of Prey did get buffed, and it makes it so that you get that 40 seconds undetectable off of getting Bloodlust, it makes no difference to Huntress because of how frequently she wants to throw hatchets. Now, in this game that I played as well, I did force use out of Beast of Prey, because I was like, I gotta, see if I throw this player off. And I did, because of the undetectable effect that I got while I was chasing them, and they were very confused about it. But Beast of Prey is anti-synergy with the Huntress because she wants to be throwing hatchets all the time. And so I can't really say that this is a good perk for her at all. And Territorial Imperative, it has a range limit. So not only does it have a 45-second cooldown on Territorial Imperative on how frequently it reveals survivors that enter the basement for 6 seconds, but it also has a 24-meter range requirement. So you have to be more than 24 meters away from the entrance of basement, and you have a 45-second cooldown before you reveal the aura of a survivor. So it's not even a good camping perk. Huntress is really good at camping. That's kind of one of her unfortunate good strengths in the game right now, is her ability to camp things out. But then Territorial Imperative is well, you can camp, but you can't be doing it from closer than 24 meters, otherwise we don't activate at all. And when it does activate, it's like somebody trying to go into basement for an unhook save that you probably already know is coming anyway, or it's because they're going down there for the chest, or because they're doing an invocation, which in 170 some games that I've played in the last few months of Killer, I have seen exactly one invocation, or 2 invocations. I've seen 2 weaving spiders, and that is it. So I would not be getting any value out of this outside of being oh, there's somebody who's hiding in basement as the last survivor to try and go out and take the hatch so that they're not discovered. And that is the only time the Territorial Imperative really ever gets any value. But because it doesn't encourage, it discourages camping, and because it's a long-ass cooldown, and because the aura reveal is 6 seconds, which is incredibly short, and you're a 4.4 killer, so you wouldn't be able to even if you were at the minimum distance away, you would barely be able to get back to the basement in time before their aura expires. It's like, this perk is so bad. It is so bad on so many levels, and the Huntress can't make any good use out of it because it doesn't work with the way that her power is designed. But because Beast of Prey also has anti-synergy, her perks not only are bad, but they have anti-synergy with her specifically, so I have to put her down at the bottom of this tier list. The Cannibal comes equipped with Barbecue and Chili, Franklin's Demise, and Knockout. Barbecue and Chili is a perk that benefits killers that have good mobility or insanely long range. And we talked about the Huntress a second ago, but another character that gets really good use out of Barbecue and Chili is the Artist. And Bubba is neither of those. He doesn't have mobility, he barely has mobility, I should say. And he doesn't really have a range attack unless you go against a laggy Bubba where it feels like he's throwing the chainsaw at you. So even though Barbecue and Chili is a really good perk, it's not a good perk for Bubba specifically. Yes, it does kind of give you information on where survivors might be resetting or where they might be working on a generator on the other side of the map. But by the time that you get to that side of the map, that information is 9 seconds old. And so you're not able to really follow up that easily with Bubba, especially if the survivors know, oh, Bubba's on his way over here. Let me just slow walk and stealth away from where I got refueled by Barbecue and Chili. And so he's just not a killer that really benefits from it. Even if it can give you good information, that good information is not something that benefits the power itself. Then you have Franklin's Demise, which only works if you basic attack a survivor. And sometimes you're like, okay, yeah, the survivor's going to go through the window before I can rev my chainsaw, so I'm going to get a basic attack and knock an item out of their hands. That's kind of good. It's good as well because it saves you from getting blinded at pallets sometimes if you've M1'd a survivor that had a flashlight before, and you can break the pallet and you don't get blinded. It also allows you to pick up survivors more frequently if you knock flashlights out of their hands and things like that. But when you're considering the way that the power works as well, because the power is not a basic attack power and it doesn't require setup like the Trapper does necessarily, it's something that just kind of incidentally gets use on its own because of the way that Bubba works. Now, the funny thing is that Knockout might be the perk that actually works best with his power, where if a survivor drops a pallet in pre-runs and then you break the pallet while in a chainsaw sweep, or in a similar way to Hillbilly, you have the chainsaw revved and they move away from the pallet, that little bit of hinder that you get can be the difference between a down or not occasionally, because it does zone them. It gives you a little bit of space to work with. It's not something that always gets value because sometimes the survivor might throw the pallet right in front of you and then you break the pallet right away because you're in the middle of a chainsaw sweep, and so the pallet doesn't exist and therefore Knockout doesn't activate. So it's like you might occasionally get value out of it if the play goes terribly wrong and somebody's massively pre-dropping against you, which shouldn't really be done against Bubba. I don't think pre-dropping should be done against most of the killers in the game anyway, but point being that even if Knockout is the perk that he can stand to benefit the most from in terms of his power because of the hinder that it gives, it's not one that really appears all that often. So even though they're perks that can be used or have combinations like Franklin's Weave, I'm going to put Bubba in little to no synergy because his power just doesn't benefit from his perks really all that much. The Nightmare has Fire Up, Remember Me, and Blood Warden. Remember Me and Blood Warden are saved by one specific add-on that allows you to teleport to exegate switches, and that is kind of about it. Being able to block the exit gate and being able to injure a survivor or the obsession 5 times in a row is not something that Freddy is uniquely benefiting from. His camping ability late game in terms of being able to stop people from going out the exit gates is significantly weaker than Bubba or Singularity or even the Huntress. Like, the Huntress actually benefits really nicely from Blood Warden overall, and even technically benefits from Remember Me because of how quickly she can throw hatchets and all of that. But the Nightmare, nah, not really his thing. So I'm going to say that, like, Remember Me and Blood Warden, like, they're not terrible perks for his power, but they don't really do anything in combination with the power. Being able to teleport to the likes of an Exegate or being able to teleport to somebody who's unwisely healing the obsession when they're asleep. I mean, maybe there's something to be said there. Maybe there's something to be said about how Freddy can stall a game out and eventually get use out of the perks that he has in the end game so that he can become a more threatening presence because he has everyone asleep. Okay, sure. Maybe there's something there. but I don't really think that there's a whole lot to really be concerned with. Fire Up is probably the only perk in this loadout that works with his power or the way that he likes to be played, because even if Freddy is significantly stronger than he was before and can catch people going around corners more quickly because of the hindered effect, or can catch people on blood pallets if they're not really paying attention, I think that Fire Up is a perk that helps him out a lot, because as the game goes on, he can then vault through windows more quickly and break pallets more quickly, and that allows him to set up blood pallets more quickly and also shut down loops more readily, as he can hinder and then vault through a window more quickly with Fire Up. And that's something that does work really nicely with his power, because not only does he hinder you, but now he vaults through faster and then catches you quicker. That's one benefit of it overall, but I really do feel like that almost is just the case with anybody who's an M1 killer in that regard. I don't see this being one that synergizes with his power directly quite as much. I don't think Fire Up really synergizes with a lot of powers to begin with, unless you're thinking Fire Up gives you the faster pickup speed, and so therefore it allows more mobile killers to break generators quicker with Pop Goes the Weasel and things like that. But at that point, I just think that it's a little to no synergy kind of angle for me. It's something that he can sometimes get use out of, but it's like barbecue and chili, right? Like, if you're vaulting a window and catching somebody with the hinder, then great, you've got a good use out of it. With barbecue and chili, if you see somebody at a distance and they continue healing even though you've approached them from that distance anyway with Bubba, and you know that there's multiple people there, then great, that's something that works out for you. But does it always work out for you? No, I don't think you're always vaulting windows with Freddy. I don't think that you're always going to be getting value out of the perk, and so therefore I'm going to put Fire Up as, even though it has a little bit of synergy, it's still little to no synergy to begin with. The pig has Make Your Choice, Scourge Hook, Hangman's Trick, and Surveillance. This is a weird one for me. I'm going to put her in little to no synergy, just kind of like right off the bat, but I'll explain why. So, Surveillance is probably the perk that she gets the most benefit from, because you can hear generators being repaired from 8 meters further away, and also after you kick a generator, you see if somebody's been working on it within the last 16 seconds after it changes color. The reason why that's good for the pig specifically is because of her stealth ability. Because you can see when a survivor is working on a generator and you see, oh, that's turned yellow, let me walk over there to the maximum distance of my terror radius and start stealthing to get over to that generator. You're able to sneak up on people a lot more quickly because of it. And if you're running the add-on combo that I like to run, which is Last Will and Workshop Grease, then Amanda gets a lot of value out of being able to chase people down, gets a lot of value out of being able to work off of that information that she's been given, because it's kind of instantaneous. It's something that she can react to. Information that she can't react to quite as well are Hangman's Trick and Make Your Choice. Even though Make Your Choice, survivor screams and they become exposed for 60 seconds, and you are more or less an M1 killer. I get a lot of M2 downs with this killer, but because you are more or less an M1 killer at the end of the day, Amanda can get decent use out of the exposed effect on Make Your Choice, and can sneak up on people that are healing under hook, because you know they got unhooked. Let me walk over there, let me stealth, let me dash in, hit them, or hit the person that was getting healed, or uncrouch and then smack them with like combat straps so you can stand up quicker and get an M1 and get it down. And it also makes it so that when you're stealthing around, you become a more a heavier threat, I guess is one way of putting it. You become more of a threat to a survivor when you're stealthing. Now, the thing is that the most powerful part of your kit anyway is the dash, so you don't always get value out of the exposed effect. And with Hangman's Trick, when you're carrying a survivor, you see the auras of people within 16 meters of a Scourge Hook, which is so random. Like, Scourge Hook placements are not consistent. And the pig needs consistency. The pig needs consistency to know exactly where to go to find people. I actually think that pig might almost synergize with Strider better than some of the perks in this selection so far. Make Your Choice, maybe there's a little bit there. Surveillance, there's like an edge case that you can make an argument for. Hangman's Trick, I mean, sure, it gives you information, but what are you going to do with that after you hook the survivor? There's not a whole lot that really ends up working out for you. And even then, when you do get that information, again, it's not something that uniquely works with the power. I think the only time that you actually get really good value out of Hangman's Trick is if you have an active head trap on another survivor, you pick up a different survivor, and that survivor who has an active head trap goes to a box that's close by a scourge hook, which is so random. You have to hope that they have a head trap, they go to a box, and that box also has a scourge hook nearby it when you pick up another survivor. So you have to be doing really well to actually get great value out of the perk for Amanda's power. So it's like, it's not bad. It doesn't have anti-synergy. It's just not great. So yeah, I'm going to keep her down here. Next up, we have the Clown, Bamboozle, Coulrophobia, and Pop Goes the Weasel. Pop Goes the Weasel is probably the least synergistic with the Clown's specific loadout, because he doesn't have the mobility necessary to get good value out of Pop Goes the Weasel. You need to be able to find a generator that has the most progress, and because you don't have the mobility, I mean, you do have some mobility with the yellow gas bottles, but you don't have the same kind of mobility like Hillbilly or Nurse or, you know, Blight. I'm going through like the S tiers again because the S tier kind of is just mobility. But the Clown doesn't get as much value out of Pop Goes the Weasel compared to a lot of other killers, and when he does get value out of it, it's kind of in the same way that other non-mobile killers would be getting value out of it anyway. If you are like kind of camping an area and using Pop Goes the Weasel, then sure, that's fine, but I don't think that it's one that benefits him more than anybody else. Then you have Bamboozle. Bamboozle is really good for the Clown, because the Clown is based around area denial and 1v1 chase, and what does Bamboozle do but lock down an area even worse for the survivor? It amplifies your chase even further. So I think that's like a very clear winner in terms of good synergy for the Clown. And then you also have Coulrophobia. Coulrophobia doesn't like do anything that the Clown wants it to. I think maybe if you want to consider interrupting heals with bottles to be a good thing, because you make the survivor scream and then it makes their healing more difficult, you could say that maybe there's some synergy with the build there, but I think that's another kind of very edge use case scenario for the power versus the perk. And I'm going to say that there's at least some synergy, because Bamboozle is just so good on him. It's good on a lot of M1 killers, and I think the Clown being able to deny areas makes him a good user of Bamboozle, and then the rest of the perks are just like, yeah, they're alright, but they're not beneficial to him specifically. Now, the Spirit's a weird one to evaluate, but I think that Haunted Ground and Rancor actually work really nicely with the Spirit, entirely because her power is an M1 power, because she's a basic attack killer. If a survivor cleanses a Hex Totem, which you can kind of defend decently well with your stealthy ability as the Spirit, and everyone becomes exposed, or they try to cleanse the totem and you just take them off of it anyway, then I think that the Spirit does get decent value out of Hex Haunted Ground. 60 seconds of exposed is a lot of time, and being able to instantly go around pallets and knock somebody down with one hit because everyone's exposed off of Haunted Ground is a really good perk synergistically with the Spirit. Now, do you always get that value? Not necessarily. She's a slow killer, so she doesn't have the mobility necessary to catch up to people, and doesn't have the ranged mobility or the like, even though she can move quickly around pallets and things like that, she doesn't have the same kind of cross-map mobility that a lot of people anticipate. And so even if somebody cleanses your totem, if all the survivors suddenly start hiding, which is what you are really encouraged to do against the Spirit, then Haunted Ground kind of loses some of its luster. The same goes for Rancor, where in the endgame, the survivor that is your obsession becomes exposed and you can kill them immediately. So if you leave the survivor for this obsession for last, then yeah, okay, you can instantly down them and kill them, and you get a kill in the endgame because of it. Like, that's a benefit that she has, and again, because she's an M1 killer, she synergizes really nicely with it. So there is some synergy to be had there. On top of that, after a generator gets completed, all survivors scream and reveal their location, so now you know where to go to find people. So you save yourself some time. I think Rancor is actually not that bad for the Spirit overall. And the way that it synergizes with her power, because she's an M1 killer, is actually kind of decent. Now, is it like always the best use case scenario? Well, no, because what if a survivor's smart enough to be like, well, this hex isn't affecting me and it's a Spirit, so maybe I shouldn't cleanse it. And then you just have people who don't cleanse your hex perks, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess there's nothing for me here now. So it's like, it's a some synergy kind of angle. I think that Spirit Fury has no synergy with the Spirit herself. And I'm saying that because the Spirit plays around pallets. She very rarely, if ever, gets stunned by them. And she very rarely, if ever, even breaks pallets, because she can play around pretty much any pallet in the game once she's mastered the ability. I mean, like, I'm terrible at Spirit. I want to get better at her, but I'm terrible at Spirit. But I know that Spirit has the capability to play around just about any pallet in the game, so the likelihood of you actually breaking a pallet at any point in the game is so incredibly low that by the time that you charge up Spirit Fury, the game's probably already over. You've probably already won at that point. But because Haunted Ground is an exposed effect, and because Rancor is an exposed effect that you can occasionally get value out of, I can still say that there is some synergy here, even if it's something that's not like a constant or consistent thing. It's not always a matter of if, like you have with the little to no synergy killers below this, but more a matter of when that does end up happening. Next up, we have the Legion, who has Discordance, Mad Grit, and Iron Maiden. Again, out of alphabetical order, but who really cares? That's how I've just written them in the notes. Discordance is the only perk in here that has decent synergy with the Legion, because you get to see if there's somebody repairing a gen with another friend nearby, and that allows you to stab them and chase after them. But the thing is that, with the way that the Legion's power works anyway, you're not, like, using Discordance to find people, if that makes sense. I think that Nemesis benefits from Discordance because of the loud sound notification that it plays, but when you are running around with the Legion, you're not going to be like, oh, I don't know where this person is because Killer Instinct isn't revealing them. If you know that somebody's nearby, you're going to go and stab somebody nearby. The only thing that Discordance does is tell you there's 2 people on this gen and you could potentially get 2 chain stabs, which is good, which is fine. Like, I think that's an okay effect. But I don't think it's like one that you're really saying, yeah, that's great synergy with the build, because what if the generator that they're repairing is on the other side of the map, and then you walk over there as your killer and you don't really have great mobility with the killer if you're not in power, and then suddenly everyone's gone and you can't find the first person that was on that generator to begin with. Well, then it doesn't really synergize now, does it? It just kind of gives you information on where things are being done and gives you a prioritizing location. So again, I'm kind of flip-flopping back and forth here. I want to say that it has some synergy, like it's good. Like it is actually good for the Legion because of the way that they like seeing grouped up survivors, but in more common situations, I find that either I don't need Discordance to find multiple survivors because of the way the power works, or if I do find a generator that's being worked on across the map anyway, then survivors who are smart enough will have spread out, and Discordance will have just given me information that there were 2 survivors here at one point, but because you're so darn slow anyway, you're just across the map at this point. Mad Grit has like no value for Legion to gather. I mean, you pause the struggle phase on, or wiggle phase on the when you're carrying a survivor, and you have no cooldown wall. Basically, like that does nothing. Iron Maiden, when you open a locker, you open it 30% faster, or you also if a survivor jumps out of a locker, they become exposed. And the only way that you ever get value out of Iron Maiden is if you're chasing a survivor down with your M2, and then they jump into a locker, and then you cancel M2, and they jump out of the locker, and then you smack them with an M1, and then you down them, and then it allows you to save a little bit of your power. But why not just pull them out of the locker and hook them anyway? Because by the time that you hook them, if you're running the right add-ons, your power will be back up to begin with. Like, it's just not, it's not something that benefits Legion as much as, you know, Artist, where if someone goes into a locker to clear their birds and then they jump back out, they're exposed for 30 seconds. And you're like, oh, okay, well, now I can't get M1 to either. So it become a lot more threatening with the Artist, or Trickster, or Huntress reloading faster at lockers when they have Iron Maiden. That's another effect that can really stack with their power nicely. The Legion is not a killer that benefits from Iron Maiden. And even though Discordance does have some synergy, I'm just going to put them down in little to no synergy, because it's like, the killer is so weak inherently anyway, and they benefit more from Thanatophobia, they benefit more from Blood Echo, even from the Oni, comparatively speaking, or even Mindbreaker, because then people can't outrun your power with Sprint Burst quite as often. But, I don't know, I don't see a whole lot outside of Discordance really being a good thing for the Legion, and I'm going to leave it at that. Now we have the Plague. The Plague has good synergy with all three of these perks. I might even dare say that she has great synergy. Corrupt Intervention, basically narrowing the playing field for her power, allows her to prioritize some generators early on with her puke and makes it so that she is able to triangulate the locations of survivors in the early game that much more quickly. And it also helps that Corrupt Intervention is a good perk, but I think that the Plague is one of the better users of it because of how her map control kind of schematic works out. You puke on a few different generators, and then you have the 3 generators at the distance that you don't really have to worry about it, so then it makes it so that you can infect more quickly in the early game. I mean, it's such a good synergy if you really think about it. I'm going to be saying that word a lot in this video. And then Infectious Fright makes it so that whenever you down somebody, anyone that's in your terror radius screams and reveals their location. And Infectious Fright for the Plague is not bad, actually, because if you down somebody with your Corrupt Puke and there's someone hiding nearby, then you can immediately snowball an advantage and keep finding more and more people that are within your terror radius as the time goes on. So it's something that she, again, works with really nicely. And I think that because of her ability to snowball and also take over a lot of like public lobbies and things like that, Plague can get a lot of really good value out of Infectious Fright, so I'd say that this is a good perk for her as well. The only one that's kind of strange to me is Dark Devotion, but the more that I think about it, I think Dark Devotion's also a good perk for the Plague because it activates off of whenever the Obsession loses a health state, and that can include whenever they succumb to the sickness from the Plague. So when they succumb to the sickness from the Plague, then they become broken, and then the Plague becomes undetectable for that duration of time when it activates on them. And so you become a stealthy killer, and then if you grab your Corrupt Puke while that survivor is making you undetectable because they've become injured by your power, you can actually knock them down really easily with the likes of your Corrupt Puke. It makes you stealthier than a lot of people expect and makes you a lot harder to track all around. So again, there is something to be said about how good that perk is. I'm kind of wondering, I don't want to like overreach and say that, oh, the Plague has just 3 good perks in her build and that therefore she's great synergy. But really, the more that I think about it, the more that I think that her perks are just great for her specifically. Because of your ability to snowball, because of your ability to control an area with this killer, she actually really likes all 3 of the perks that she has offered to her in her Adept. And I'm going to put her up in great synergy because of that. Next up, we have the Ghostface, who brings I'm All Ears, Furtive Chase, and Thrilling Tremors. Furtive Chase, actually, when I was playing my Adept game for this video, was something that I got a lot more value out of than I initially anticipated, because one of Ghostface's biggest, I mean, there's a lot of weaknesses of Ghostface, but one of his biggest weaknesses is the fact that when you hook a survivor, you can't go undetectable to find other survivors right away, because you have to get out of the line of sight of the person that you've hooked. So if you happen to hook the Obsession, you get all of that haste for 18 seconds and the undetectable. And that allows you to clear so much distance while still being just as stealthy as normal. Now granted, you won't be able to stalk quite as easily, but it still allows you to get into position more readily because of the way that you can actually synergize with this perk. It's such a good perk for him. And I think that it's really underrated in that regard. Now, after Furtive Chase runs out, then you have 18 seconds of haste and undetectable status effect. You have the and stealth, that's what I was trying to say. And then you can go into your Shroud mode and then sneak up on people and stalk them from a distance as well. It's so good. It's so potent overall. And I got a lot of value out of it in this game that I played as well on Gas Heaven. So I think that it's a good perk for the Ghostface because of the way that... Oh, and it also makes him faster when he's crouching. I mean, duh, it's haste. It's a haste effect. And then you know when somebody unhooks, you know exactly where to get your next Obsession from, and you can stalk them and mark them and get them down. I mean, like, the more that I think about it, the more that Furtive Chase just feels like a really nice perk for the Ghostface, even if the Ghostface isn't all that great. I'm All Ears is also a really, really good perk on him, because if a survivor vaults a window, which they will, or a pallet, which they will, you get to know what direction they're moving. It allows you to go into Night Shroud and sneak around the obstacle to find that survivor again. So if they, vault a pallet on a 4-lane, let's say, with a long wall, and you see their aura, then you can go into Night Shroud and you can sneak around, and then you can get that basic attack off of them, or stalk them and knock them down before they even realize what's happened. because of your ability to go into stealth mode. It's actually a really good chase perk for this killer specifically. Then Thrilling Tremors. I think Thrilling Tremors is one of the weaker ones for him overall, because if it ends up blocking all the generators, you get no information. If it ends up not blocking a generator that's on the far side of the map, then you don't really get any value out of it, because by the time that it unblocks, you might already be shit out of luck in terms of finding a survivor at that generator. But Thrilling Tremors does give you a direction. I mean, it's a stronger version of Discordance, because you know, hey, there's somebody working on this gen over here. Let me go hook this person real quick, and then after I hook them, I can go and stalk the person that's on that generator specifically. So it's like, again, I feel like these are 3 great perks that actually synergize really well with the Ghostface because of his ability to manipulate chases with stealth, because of his ability to get into position and then stealth people even better because of furtive chase, and his ability to stealth people out while they're on a generator that he knows is being worked on. Now, granted, some survivors that are really good at the game will play around Thrilling Tremors and they just won't interact with any generator when somebody gets picked up, especially if they're on comms, but the likelihood of that happening and likelihood of people actually playing that way is pretty low. It happened in this game that I played, but I still got the 4K anyway, so that was, pretty good, I will say. But yeah, all 3 perks, really great on him, and that'll take us into our next killer, which is the Demogorgon, who has Cruel Limits, Mindbreaker, and Surge. Cruel Limits is whenever a generator is completed, all vault locations are blocked for a little bit. It's, I don't know, I think like with the Demogorgon can get juked out by window fakes and can also be very susceptible to people vaulting through windows before he even has it has an opportunity to get a damage tag on them with its dash. So it does have some synergy in the sense that it makes from the abyss or abyssal charge or whatever, I don't know what the dash attack is called. I've played a lot of Demogorgon. I love playing Demo, but it makes the dash attack less powerful or more powerful in some respects after a generator's been completed. So there is something to be said about how synergistic this perk can be with the Demogorgon specifically. It might be better with the Clown because you just lock down entire areas immediately after a generator gets completed, but I don't think the Demogorgon is hurting with this perk either, so it's not a bad perk for it specifically, even if it is just a bad perk in general. Then you have Mindbreaker, where Mindbreaker makes it so that people can't sprint burst off of generators, which is really nice for Demogorgon, and especially because of that recent stealth buff that he got. So now that you have 12 seconds of undetectable when you emerge from a portal, being able to chase down a survivor on a generator, especially knowing that they don't have Lithe active, or they don't have Dead Hard, or they don't have Sprint Burst available to them, allows you to get hits at generators more readily, and that's thanks to the new undetectable duration that they've given him. Like, they increased it from 5 seconds to 12 seconds, which is insane, but I'm very happy for it, as I think the Demogorgon's been kind of low tier for a while now, and Mindbreaker is a perk that works with it pretty darn well. Now, a perk that doesn't work with it particularly well is Surge. Surge is a perk that works off of basic attacks, and in order to get the most use out of Demogorgon, you're not always going to be basic attacking people. In fact, you're going to be using your dash attack more often than anything else, because the increased movement speed and the increased look angle makes it so much easier to hit nowadays. So you are not going to be getting a lot of value out of Surge in general with this killer, because he prefers, I keep doing that by mistake, because it prefers hitting people with its M2 attack. It's like 60-40 split, I feel. I feel like 60% of the hits that I get with Demogorgon are with the M2, and so even though Surge is like, it's not a terrible perk, it's an okay perk. I have a video that I'm working on that's talking about Surge specifically and how it's kind of outclassed in a lot of ways, but the Demogorgon is an example of how you are a killer that just doesn't always get value out of Surge, and the only time that you're ever getting value out of a Surge is when people misplay and when the map is designed badly, in terms of like indoor maps or like close-knit maps in a way. So I don't know, Surge isn't really great for the Demogorgon, but Cruel Limits and Mindbreaker are like okay. So I'm going to say that there's some synergy to be had in there, even if they're exceptions and they're not always the greatest options for you, because even if a survivor could make it to a window, it's possible they wouldn't be taking it or making it because of the increased speed that you get from the dash now. I can't say that the Demogorgon is, terribly synergistic with a lot of things they do. Next up, we have the Oni. The Oni has Blood Echo, Zanchin Tactics, and Nemesis. A Blood Echo makes it so that whenever a survivor or an injured survivor... Hold on. Let's try again. Blood Echo makes it so that whenever you hook a survivor, every other injured survivor becomes hemorrhaged and exhausted for 30 seconds. So the thing about that synergy specifically is that you have to keep a survivor injured in order for it to work. So if you can't keep a survivor injured because you have to go and dash around and spread your hooks and everything, or spread your damage and everything, and because healing perks are so incredibly common, getting value out of Blood Echo for the Oni specifically is so incredibly difficult. But if you do manage to injure multiple survivors or get that snowball going with the Oni, and you pick up somebody and you hook them, and then everyone is hemorrhaged, and so it takes them longer to recoup their losses with their heals, and they continue bleeding, and they make it so you get more blood orbs. This perk is wonderful for the Oni. Not having to worry about sprint burst or having to worry about dead hard on an injured target for the next 30 seconds, especially if they're running away from you, is such a godsend. Because it really plays into your ability to snowball quite nicely. So I'd say that's like already a perk that's in good synergy for him. Outside of that though, I can't say Zanchin Tactics or Nemesis are ones that he particularly benefits from more than anybody else. I mean, yes, if you're doing a demon dash and you see, oh, there's a pallet coming up, let me make sure that I swing at the pallet while I'm in demon form to break the pallet as the survivor drops it in the meantime, then yeah, like there's something to be said for that. Then you also get aura reading when they drop a pallet, so you know what direction to try and dash to get your demon dash, and then from there you can track people down more quickly. It's okay. Like, it's a perk that is fine. I think that Zanchin Tactics is a pretty underrated perk overall, but it's something that would probably be better fit for Ghostface or somebody along those lines, like a stealthy killer that wants to try and manipulate a chase, or even like Deathslinger. Like Deathslinger, I think would get really good value out of Zanchin Tactics because you're aura raiding through the wall after they drop a pallet, kind of thing. But past that, I can't say that Oni his power is a great user of Zanchin Tactics. It's just one that you can use if you're playing in a heads-up kind of way, but it's not, the greatest effect necessarily. And then Nemesis. Nemesis is something that I'm kind of on the fence about. Let's say that you're demon dashing, or you're even in regular Oni form, and somebody stuns you with a pallet, then they become oblivious for 60 seconds, which makes it harder or a flashlight even, because Nemesis works on both. And then you're in demon form and you demon dash at them while they're oblivious. The oblivious effect, in and of itself, giving a survivor the inability to listen to your terror radius from a distance, if you've snowballed well enough, is terrifying, because they don't know that you're coming and then suddenly you're insta-downed. So Oni has like something that he can get out of Nemesis with his power, and there is something to be said about being able to have high mobility onto somebody who doesn't know where your terror radius is. But if somebody stuns you and gets the Nemesis effect and becomes oblivious for 60 seconds, they're probably already in chase with you, and they already know where you are. The likelihood of you getting stunned by somebody and giving them Nemesis and they get oblivious and they don't know where you are shortly afterwards is so incredibly small, especially because it's Oni. Oni's loud as hell, and so it's not like it's going to be a surprise when you show up behind them with this effect, and it only affects one survivor at a time. I mean, I'd even say that Oni would get better use out of Nemesis's Hysteria, because spreading injuries gives everyone oblivious for 40 seconds, and that would be something that would be way more powerful on this killer than Nemesis. So it's not that it's a bad perk per se, but like Zanchin Tactics, it has specific use case scenarios that the Oni can't capitalize on quite as much as other killers can. And because Blood Echo is like okay, I will still be okay with putting him in some synergy. I could even argue for little to no synergy, but I think if you compare it again to the tier below him, he's just going to be okay with the perks. Now we get the Deathslinger, who has Deadman Switch, Gearhead, and Hex Retribution. Oh boy, I think that all three of these perks are fantastic on Deathslinger. I know. I'm biased. I am probably kind of crazy for saying this, but I really do think Deathslinger has great synergy with all three of his perks. And the reason is that every single one of them kind of revolves around range defense. Now, Deadman's Switch makes it so that when you hook a survivor, the next generator that they stop preparing is blocked for 35 seconds. And because you have a ranged attack, you can threaten them from a further distance and block a generator a lot earlier than a lot of other killers can make their threat known. And if you pull somebody off of a generator, they block the generator. Like, that's great. That's a fantastic combination for this killer. I think that he makes really good use out of this perk. Does he want to use it all the time? I mean, no, but I think that if you're trying to really just say, how does this power interact with this perk specifically? I think Deadman's Switch gets a lot more value for Deathslinger than a lot of people realize that it really does. So I'm quite happy with saying that that's a good perk for him. Gearhead as well. You injure a survivor, you break a chain, and then, or knock somebody down, and then you get 30 seconds, or within the next 30 seconds, if somebody does a good skill check on a location, you get their aura read for 9 seconds, and that lingers. That lingers for 9 seconds. It's a long time to get aura reading for. And so, because Slinger is so good with aura reading, and because it's something that gives you really good information on where somebody is actually working on a generator, he gets really good use out of this, especially because he can break the chain with a cigar and then get free injury and then follow up with another down and look around and be like, okay, well, they're working on that gen and that gen. So I know that when I pick this person up, I can hook them and I can walk over there and immediately get aura reading value off of it. Now, of course, it is a little bit reliant on being able to land skill checks from the survivor side, but I think that if you're trying to think of, you know, an aura reading perk that Deathslinger can make use out of, Gearhead is not terrible. I'm All Ears is definitely better for him, but Gearhead is probably one of the better ones in the game, in my opinion, but that's also just my opinion. I'm very biased. Hex Retribution. Now, Hex Retribution makes it so that when a survivor interacts with the totem, they become oblivious. Deathslinger loves his stealth effects. So when a survivor is oblivious and they're touching a Hex totem, he can defend the Hex totem from a distance and also pull them away from it. And he's stealthy, and so they can't hear him arriving. And then he can shoot them from a distance and get those free injuries and things off of this perk. And even if the Hex does get cleansed, he gets 20 seconds of aura reading off of it, which now, if he was in the middle of a chase and the Hex gets cleansed, now he gets aura reading in the middle of that chase. And aura reading is really good on Deathslinger. So again, it's like 3 perks that just work so well with his power overall. And I can't really think of any other... Well, I mean, I can think of other perks that will be stronger in their slots, of course. But if you're thinking of these perks isolated and the way that he wants to actually play his game, all 3 of these perks are fantastic. I think they have great synergy with his power, and I'm very happy with putting him up here, even though I am probably biased. I just think like these are good perks for his power, and I'm glad that I picked him because, you know, he's my favorite baby boy. I love Deathslinger. Mwah, I smorch. Next up, we have the Executioner, who has Trail of Torment, Force Penance, and Deathbound. I can't say that Executioner gets a whole lot of value out of most of this. The one that he might get the most value out of is Trail of Torment, because being able to stealth up on somebody and get a free M2 hit is pretty understated in its overall strength. But the thing is that the Pyramid Head is so incredibly loud. You hear its loud ass breathing, and you hear his sword as he like stabs it into the ground, and you can hear really clearly dragging behind him as he's using his power, to the point where I don't think that he's like the best user of a stealth perk overall, just because of how damned loud he is. And the same goes for Deathbound, where after a survivor heals somebody else, they gain Oblivious until they're injured again. And again, if you're paying attention and you're actually just like listening, kind of like Springtrap, right? Like his loud ass feet. The Pyramid Head doesn't have the greatest time using his perks because stealth is not something that he's inherently great with. He does get some value out of it, and that's fine. But I think that his inherent design outside of that, and considering the way that he's just so darn loud anyway, doesn't make it so that he really gets good value out of this. Now, he does get information if somebody heals somebody else and they don't know what Deathbound does, but I don't think that there's a whole lot to be said in terms of, yes, Pyramid Head's power is really good at making use out of Deathbound. I think that Deathbound is better on killers with mobility, and this character is not really one that has that, unless you're doing like the super sniper thing where you have what's the add-on that makes it so that you get plus 200% range. And so when you have the extra range, maybe being able to snipe people from downtown after they've healed, but it's even that's after they healed, so they split up anyway. So again, like, getting multiple hits is just not great. Now, what is great, though, is Force Penance, where if a survivor is trying to body block somebody else, Pyramid Head's power just prevents that from happening entirely, and Force Penance makes it even more of a punishment, I would say. Because when you body block, okay, well, now you hit through 2 of them, and then the person who was in front gets a protection hit. And so that's actually a really good bit of synergy with his power, but you know, just because he's so damned loud, I don't think Trail of Torment and Deathbound are, like, the best perks on him. You might catch some people off guard here and there, but it's not the strongest combination. So I'm just going to say he, like, kind of has some synergy similar to Oni overall. Of the Blight, who has Dragon's Grip and 2 hexes in the form of Blood Favor and Undying. Blood Favor is probably the perk that synergizes best with the Blight's power, in the sense that you can get entries really quickly and prevent survivors from dropping pallets, which just makes chases so much more difficult against this killer. It makes it difficult against any other killer, but Blight especially, because of his ability to swing and hit people and get injuries so incredibly quickly, makes it so that Blood Favor is something that he uniquely gets a lot of value from. I think there are a lot of killers in this game that benefit from Blood Favor, because Blood Favor is a very unhealthily designed perk that just makes chases impossible and really freaking annoying. But Blood Favor in and of itself is a perk that the Blight actually benefits from so incredibly well that it's a good synergy perk with him overall. Then you have Undying, which keeps Blood Favor up for longer, and also because you're the Blight, you can move across the map quickly and defend your hexes with basically no issue whatsoever. So you can just sprint around and smack people and then make it so that they can't drop pallets on you, and then you sprint around and then you prevent people from getting the next totem down, and Undying just protects that even further. So then people have to decide between, do I do gens or do I stop this totem that is making it so that I can't last in chases, and then they have to cleanse it twice. That's incredible. Like, and Undying is just good for Blight in general because of how much time it wastes for survivors in any build that you would basically throw it into that has a hex build. And again, because you have Blood Favor in here, they synergize with themselves and then again with the Blight himself. So it's a great perk, great couple of perks for him. Now, Dragon's Grip for some reason just has anti-synergy, because with the Blight, you're not M1ing very often. You're probably M1ing maybe 20% of the time, and then the other 80% of the time you're using your Blight dashes, which you can't get exposed value out of. So the only thing that this perk really does is it just tells you, hey, that generator that you kicked within the last 30 seconds, there's somebody on it now, and you should go get them. So you do kind of get information out of it in general. And I'd say that even if Dragon's Grip doesn't have great synergy with him, the fact that you still get information off of it, and the fact that you can still intimidate people off of it, and if you don't have your charges up and that person is exposed anyway, and because you have 2 hexes that work decently well with his power, I'm going to go ahead and put him in good synergy and call that a day. Now you have the twins, who have Oppression, Coup de Grace, and Hoarder. I don't think that the twins synergize with their perks particularly well. Oppression might be the best one overall, because if you kick a gen, then everything regresses, and that allows you to continue having this like passive global pressure that the twins always does, and that being that you can be in 2 places at once. Like, you can literally be in 2 places at once, and Oppression increases that capability by saying, I'm going to kick this gen. Now all the gens are regressing. Oh, someone missed a skill check over there. Let me go be over there, but also be over here at the same time because of the way that their power works. That being said, the twins do not get any value whatsoever out of Coup de Grace. Coup de Grace is a perk that works off of basic attacks, and Victor can't use basic attacks. Victor just dash attacks at you. I think the only value that you can really say that Coup de Grace actually gets is that when you're in Charlotte mode and you're trying to get downs or injuries ahead of time so that you can then swap to Victor and down people, Coup de Grace just allows you to get those hits more easily, so you can chain it into Victor more readily. Like, there's kind of something that goes on there. And then Hoarder, maybe Hoarder you can plop Charlotte down on an item or nearby a chest and then run around with Victor and vine people off of that. And if they try to interact with the item that's been dropped, then you swap back to Charlotte and tag them for their sins at the end of the day. But I don't think Hoarder's like a perk that the Twins really likes. The Hag really likes it because you can camp items out and teleport back to items whenever somebody tries to pick them up. But there ain't a whole lot past that the Twins can really do with it. And then because you don't really use coup de grace while you're using Victor, then you lose a lot of synergy for that. You can kind of get injuries better with Charlotte when you have it available, and it's fine. And Oppression's like okay, but it doesn't always give you guaranteed value, right? Like the Survivor might see, oh, that's a difficult skill check. Okay, let me just hit that skill check, and they forego the challenge of Oppression anyway. And so I'd say that there's at least like some synergy to kind of sort of maybe be had there, but she's not really, well, I mean, the two of them aren't really the best users of their own respective perks, and I don't think that their power lends itself to a powerful synergistic effect. The Trickster has No Way Out, Starstruck, and Crowd Control, Hex Crowd Control. I don't know what to think about these perks, because I think that No Way Out can be something that's good on the Trickster because of how much time you sometimes spend trying to get downs with your power, and then buying yourself more time in the end game to get those extra hits, to stall things out for yourself, is a lot more powerful than being able to, I don't know, anything else really. Like, does it actually give you a whole lot of power by discouraging you from playing well in the early game to then have a really good late game effect in case you just happen to chain a bunch of hooks together? I don't know. I don't think that's something that really the power gets a whole lot of use out of. Now, granted, if somebody touches a exit in the end game, you get that loud noise notification and you can be like, oh, cool, let me walk over there and start my chase again, and then I have time to actually get this chase in the end game as well. Maybe there's something to be said about that. I think Crowd Control might be his best perk synergy-wise, because now you don't have to worry about a window ever again, and because you are effectively an area denial killer, when a survivor vaults through a window and they block it and then they can't vault back out of it, that makes them a really easy target for knives as well. Main Event is a really good effect against people who try to go through a window and then they kind of trap themselves on the other side of the wall. And so Trickster can get good use out of Crowd Control here and there because of the nature of his power, and it's like a zoning power. It's an AoE sort of power, comparatively speaking. Starstruck, after you pick up a survivor, all survivors within the terror radius become exposed. So you want to use them once to down people. And sure, you're not using knives to always down people, and being able to punish altruism in that way is a positive effect. I mean, I even have it happen in the background footage of this video where I had a whole bunch of people just swarming me all the time, and then I hit Starstruck and it was like, well, now what? What are you going to do now that I have an exposed effect on me? And that's like a good use case scenario, but I don't think that Starstruck, when you're considering that the Trickster likes to use knives for his power, is the way that you want the power to be represented, because it's just an M1 ability. It's an exposed ability. You knock them down with your M1. And I don't think that's like great. I'm not gonna be honest. I don't think Starstruck really has any synergy with the Trickster. It's not that it's bad. It doesn't really have anti-synergy necessarily, because sometimes you do weave basic attacks through a lot of things, and you basic attack and then follow up with knives, or knives and then basic attack. It's not that it's unheard of to use a basic attack in a chase with this killer, but Starstruck in and of itself is not something that synergizes with the use cases of the power all the time. And because you already get one injury or usually finish an injury with the knives, Starstruck is not something that you really necessarily see because of the way that the power kind of flows into itself otherwise. It leapfrogs over the requirement for the power in that way. So I'd say that even though Hex Crowd Control has good synergy in the fact that you can just deny windows and make survivors even easier targets than before, and you can technically defend it from a range because you are a ranged killer, and because No Way Out does buy you a little bit of time in the end game, I know that it's become a really bloated tier overall, but I'm still going to put him in some synergy because there is some to be had there, but I don't think it's necessarily good or great, so we're just going to have him in there. Next up, we have the Nemesis, who has Lethal Pursuer, Eruption, and Hysteria. I don't know how I feel about a lot of these perks. Eruption is just a good perk, but it's not one that his power really benefits from. I mean, technically the zombies go towards the loud sound notification after the generator explodes and after the survivor screams, so maybe there's a little bit to be had there, but really I think that the main effect of kick a generator, explode a generator from range, and also get aura reading is not nearly as synergistic with the power as we might really think. There's not a whole lot here, in my opinion, so I'm not going to say that there's a whole lot to be done. Now, Lethal Pursuer is really good with Nemesis's power, even though it's good on basically any killer in the game, but I think it's really good for Nemesis's power because the sooner that you find a survivor, the sooner that you can start stacking your infection tiers. And so once you get that infection tier going and you have that ability to just chain downs and chain infections and make it a lot easier on yourself, really, like being like, okay, yeah, there's somebody there, wham, good to know that I can get that going, and then I have Marvin's Blood, so I can tier up a lot quicker than I normally could, or there's 2 survivors right here because I know that because of Lethal Pursuer, then Marvin's Blood allows me to get those 2 tags really early, and I can get tier 2 extremely quickly. So there is some benefit to be had there. Now the problem is that, of course, he's not very mobile, so he can't really make great use out of Lethal Pursuer, but I think that when we're considering more in the sense of I get faster infection rates in the early game, that's something that really benefits the Nemesis overall. And then Hysteria is a weird one where when you injure a survivor, that all injured survivors gain Oblivious for 40 seconds. And I don't know how I feel about this one, to be quite honest with you. But I think that the ability for the Nemesis to get multiple hits with the Tentacle Whip, and then it solves a little bit of his mobility issue by making it so that he basically has no terror radius for anybody that's injured for 40 seconds. There's something to be said about how it makes up for his lack of mobility in that way. And Eruption does kind of help the zombies out a little bit by saying, hey, there's people over here, zombies, go chase them down quickly. I mean, again, I hate I'm looking at this list of like middle of some synergy and saying like, yeah, I mean, that's another one that just kind of feels like it fits in there, where there are use case scenarios where it is good, and Lethal Pursuer is good because you can eventually chase somebody down, or you chase multiple people down at the start of the game because you know exactly where they are, and Eruption gives the information to the zombies where people are, but they might not always be nearby, and the zombies are kind of unreliable anyway. And then Hysteria is like, well, maybe you become stealthy for a little bit, but that's also relying on other people not getting healed in the meantime, and also being able to swap off of Chase to go and chase somebody else. It's just, I think the Nemesis is a character that is really good at knocking one survivor down extremely quickly, and that's not something that you can really say he spreads damage quite as easily as other killers can. He's one that is like, I'm going to 3-tap you and you're down. And if you're blue, then I'm going to 2-tap you really quickly and you're down. But then because healing perks are so strong anyways, he doesn't have the ability to spread pressure quite as easily because of the way that his power works. So I'm just going to put him in some synergy. I know it's kind of annoying to see him in there, but I can't say that a lot of his perks are just like great for his power in a lot of ways. There are other things that I would prefer to have on Nemesis because of the way that they work with his power, and this just isn't all it. Next up, we have the Cenobite, one of the characters that, you know, nobody can acquire anymore, and their perks are general perks, but I'm still going to talk about anyway. I think the Cenobite actually has good synergy with their perks, and that's because, like I was talking about earlier with Myers and needing something to work with Dying Light, the Cenobite actually having something that you can work off of in order to stall the game out is highly beneficial. Scourge Hook Gift of Pain, also known as Scourge Hook Weeping Wounds, makes it so that survivors' healing become hemorrhaged and mangled for 90 seconds after they're unhooked from a Scourge Hook. And because of the way that Cenobite's power works, where you can throw a chain at somebody and it interrupts whatever action they're working on, if they're healing under hook and you turn around and you stab them with the chain, you get to pull them away from each other and they start hemorrhaging and losing all that healing progress. And also because they have to go for the box. If they have been healed, they get a 16% slower gen repair penalty. So now they go for the box and they take time opening the box, and they might get chased off of the box or prevented from using it. And if they do manage to get back to a generator eventually, they have 16% slower generator repair speed on top of the time that they have wasted trying to do this secondary task. Weeping Wounds is great. I think Weeping Wounds is really good for the Cenobite, and I think it's a great perk overall. Deadlock, on the other hand, is not fantastic. I think that actually one thing that Deadlock does really well for the Cenobite is it helps rediscover any sort of location that has, or helps you rediscover where the box might be. Because when a generator gets completed, you know there's a survivor there. And then you see the other generator get blocked, so you know there's a survivor over there. And you know where you are or where you were when the box spawned into the game. So that means that you can easily triangulate, okay, well, if I'm here and there's somebody on that gen down there that got completed and somebody over there on that gen that's been blocked by Deadlock, then, I think that by triangulating my location, I can find the box really nicely with Deadlock. Now, it is a very specific use case scenario, and it requires understanding box logic, which, I'm going to be honest, if you're this far into this video, I think my next P100 might honestly be Cenobite, because I really do enjoy this killer and the whole, like, math and mind games and things that go into playing him correctly. But being able to triangulate the location of the box with this perk is a lot more powerful than I think a lot of people give credit for. And so that's why I think it actually synergizes really well with this killer. Now, Hexblade thing is, like, kind of whatever. I feel, in my opinion, it's a kind of whatever perk overall. It doesn't really waste a whole lot of time, but it does waste some time from the survivors, on top of wasting time forcing them to go for the box, on top of wasting time forcing them to cleanse totems. And then if you're running Gift of Pain on top of that, you force them to take longer to heal, they take longer to go and do generators, and then now they have to take time to go and cleanse totems if they feel like it. But that being said, the Oblivious effect isn't very threatening for the Pinhead overall. And so even if it is, like, hypothetically good, some people might see, oh, it's Plaything, might be Pentimento, I'm not going to touch this perk, and I'm fine with being Oblivious against a Pinhead, because Pinhead kind of announces his arrival. I mean, he literally announces his arrival whenever someone solves the box, but he also announces his arrival at any sort of objective by hitting you with chains, and so you're not really remiss for information when you are playing against the Cenobite when you are Oblivious. So it's not really something that he gets more value out of than other killers. I mean, again, Oblivious is really good on characters that have good mobility, and Cenobite is unfortunately not one of them, but maybe a little bit of time wasting here and there. It's not great. It's just a good perk overall, and I will definitely put him up here, because I don't think he's fantastic with all three perks, but I will put him in the second highest tier because of this. Artist has Grim Embrace, Hex Pentimento, and Scourgehook Pain Res, which I actually think, this is a crazy statement for me to make, but I actually think it has little to no synergy with her power. They are three good perks. Don't get me wrong. Whenever somebody says, what killer should I unlock first for their perks, usually people say the Artist and the Plague. But the reason why I think that the Artist doesn't synergize with their perks necessarily is because Pain Res hits a generator, makes survivors that are working on it scream. But you don't get to see where those screams are, because it doesn't reveal their location, and you don't have any information with which to send birds at. So you just kind of blindly think, like, well, okay, it hit a gen, it could be that one out there, and you send a bird out that way. But that's not the perk really working for you. You just kind of already know that a generator has been hit, and you know that there are people on the generator, so you're just going to send birds in that direction and hope for the best. And that's fine, but it's not something that really works with the Artist necessarily. Grim Embrace actually almost has anti-synergy with the Artist, because when all the generators are blocked by her power, or by her perk here, she can't send birds to the generators to swarm people, because now they've walked away from them. They've walked away from the gens, and Grim Embrace is blocking the generators so they can't sit in a static location across the map. So it's almost anti-synergy, again, with that one in that regard. Then you have Hex Pentimento. Pentimento is a perk that relies on other perks, and also, now that it reveals its aura to people, is so weak. Like, it's a lot weaker than it used to be. I mean, granted, like, yeah, sure, it can be good in combination with other perks, and yes, the artist is okay at being able to defend her hex sodas because she has that long range, and there is a little bit of synergy to be had there. Penamento is not something that you would consider using with the artist. I think the artist is, again, another killer similar to the Huntress who benefits from long-range aura reading, although a lot of people benefit from that, but long-range aura reading. Anything like Iron Maiden is a synergy that I brought up earlier when I was talking about the Legion, because you can jump into lockers to cleanse birds, and then they become exposed, so now they have to choose between getting hit by a bird or getting hit by the artist herself. But because you don't really have anything like that in her perk kit specifically, she's just kind of like, whatever, you know? And also, if the generator blows up from pain res, survivor's like, oh, she has pain res. Let me move away because it's an artist, because she might send a bird over here. Okay, cool. Now we resume our repair. And that's it. There's like, artist doesn't really match with her perks very well, unfortunately. Even though they are good perks, it's just not good perks for her power. Now we have the Onryo, who has Colubrine, Floods of Rage, and Merciless Storm. I'm going to say that these are actually good synergistic perks for this killer. Colubrine makes it so that when you kick a generator, it starts regressing at 150% of its regular regression speed. Actually, is that right? Yeah, I was right. It was 150%. 150%. And then as well, when somebody repairs that generator and hits a good skill check, you get loud noise notifications. And the reason why this is good synergy with the Onryo is because if that generator has a TV nearby it, you can start teleporting around and know that that TV that you're teleporting to is going to instantly mark anybody who was on that generator. And that is such good synergy. That is such a great combination effect for her to be able to win the game. Like, it just gives her good information, it gives you good slowdown overall, it kind of lets you control an area of the map, and that's what the Onryo really likes doing, is being able to control around a certain area of the map and forcing survivors to go for tapes and slowing the game down. So now that you've teleported a bunch around this generator that you know that they're working on, they are forced to go and take a tape and take it across the map to a different location. And that's good synergy. That's just something that works really well for her. Then Floods of Rage, when somebody gets unhooked, everyone else has their aura revealed for 7 seconds. And that is incredible, again, because information across the map, hey, that person's nearby a TV, or that person's running to a TV that might even be trying to deposit their tape because they have high condemn stacks. That is good synergy. That is good information for her to have. Now, granted, you do have to put people on a scourge hook, but the insinuation, if you're running this perk, is that you're going to be hitting people on a scourge, or you're going to be putting people on a scourge hook, and so that allows you to get that cross-map information all the time. So I think that's pretty good synergy overall, and I will say that aura reading is good. Having a cross-map teleport is really good, and both of those together, when they're together, they make a really good perk combination overall. Then you have Merciless Storm, which I think is her weakest perk overall. It's one that works really well with the Doctor because it gives people continuous skill checks, and if they miss the skill check, then they blow up the gen and it gets blocked for 30 or 20 seconds. And I think, like, it's okay. It's not a perk that benefits Sadako necessarily. It's not one that detriments her either. And it kind of gives you information too, funny enough, by being like, oh, hey, by the way, somebody was almost done with this gen over here, and now they've stopped working on it, so you can teleport over there and probably catch somebody off of that gen if you're fast enough. So maybe there's something to be said about how maybe you can say that it's a perk that works well with her power, but I don't think that the examples are quite as clear-cut as Call of Brine, as Floods of Rage, comparatively speaking. And I'm okay with keeping her up in good synergy and keeping her just off of great. Next up, we have the Dredge. Anti-synergy for the Dredge perks is what we're going to say for that one. The Dredge has a power where after you smack enough survivors, hook enough survivors, and they've stayed injured for long enough, and after a certain amount of time has passed, you become undetectable. Septic Touch and Dissolution are perks that work off of you having a terror radius. So if you're in your strongest mode, which is during Nightfall because of the decreased cooldown of your power and increased movement speed, teleporting between lockers and everything, you can't activate these perks. this is like the cruelest joke that Behavior has ever played on a killer. They're like, hey, by the way, we know that half of your power is designed around not having a terror radius. We're going to make you have perks that are designed with working with a terror radius, which is like the most unbelievable anti-synergy that I can think of in terms of perk combinations overall. Like, okay, sure, so you get Dissolution and then you force a survivor over a pallet while you're not in Nightfall, but then when you are in Nightfall you just lose that combination anyway. And if you're losing 50/50s on the Dredge with your power, I think that you deserve to not have Dissolution anyway, because with the Dredge, your entire power, the other half of your power where you're using the Remnant and you're teleporting to the Remnant and everything, is based around just knowing how survivors move and being able to become your own sort of pincer effect, which is funny considering that you have that crab skin in the game as well. But because you can kind of become your own pincer effect, you don't really get a great amount of use out of Dissolution, because you already are doing what Dissolution does, and that is just removing the viability of a dropped pallet. And then it leads us to Darkness Revealed, where Darkness Revealed is like, oh, okay, yeah, a locker perk for the character that goes into lockers. But the thing is that this perk only activates when you open a locker. So if you teleport to a locker, Darkness Revealed does not activate. So it doesn't even work with his power to begin with. You have to open the locker manually, and there are only a couple of killers that willingly do that in the form of course, the Huntress and the Trickster. And so having a perk that's like, hey, you open the locker, you have to open the locker and then find out what locker they're nearby and then teleport to that locker. I mean, maybe there's something here, but it's like, why would I not just teleport to a bunch of different lockers and bring Field Recorder and reveal locations of survivors anyway? That's just a lot easier, isn't it? So I think that considering that Darkness Revealed makes you go out of the way to not use your power, and then Septic Touch and Dissolution require you to have a terror radius when your power doesn't have a terror radius, is anti-synergy. I'm sorry to say. I love the Dredge. I think he's a beautiful baby boy, but I just don't think that it gets a lot of value out of its own unique perks. Now you have the Mastermind, who, the Mastermind, when I was playing him for this game, felt like total ass. That's not related at all to the perks. I just wanted to say that the changes that were made to this killer's power have made him feel terrible, because I get it caught like a glue trap on everything now. He comes equipped with Awakened Awareness, Superior Anatomy, and Terminus. And I'm hard-pressed to really say that these perks are good for the Mastermind specifically. Awakened Awareness, maybe, if you get a Survivor Slam and you pick them up and put them on your shoulder and then you can see the auras of everyone within 20 meters. Yeah, maybe. But I don't think there's a whole lot of killers that benefit from carrying a Survivor and then seeing auras outside of ones that have effects like the Oni, where you're okay with seeing a bunch of survivors that are hiding nearby. I've even run this on the Demogorgon a couple of times, and I found that really fun as well. Or the Nurse, where you're carrying a survivor, and then you see, oh, there's a survivor nearby me within the next 20 meters that you can just teleport onto them. Like, the Mastermind is just like, okay, there's somebody nearby, and then I can dash at you, but is that really enough to say that this perk has synergy with the power? I can't say that that is necessarily true. Superior Anatomy only works off of basic vault, so if you vault with your power, you don't actually get that increased vaulting speed from Superior Anatomy. And that's kind of a bummer, but it does allow you to save some tokens, so maybe there's a little bit to be said there, in the sense that you can vault a window faster, and then you save your tokens for your dashes so that you don't have to burn through them in order to catch a survivor afterwards. And it makes you a lot more threatening when you have that double dash available. Does that make you potent? Why did I say potent? Potent power. Does that make you a potent killer with this perk? I don't know. I can't say that it's more potent than somebody like Myers, who gets increased vaulting speed, better value out of it overall, or a killer that wants to close down M1 vault locations, or killers that have add-ons like the Xenomorph who make them vault faster. Like, I think those are killers that would get better value out of Superior Anatomy, and Wesker doesn't really have that capability, comparatively speaking. I mean, yes, you get to keep tokens, so that's kind of nice, but it's not like, oh yeah, this is something that works really well with the power directly. Then you have Terminus, where everybody is broken in the end game, and then they're broken for 45 seconds after the exit gates are open. And the only reason that this even remotely works with this power is because if you have been spreading injuries and they don't heal before the end game, then you can just one-tap grab anybody regardless of their infection rate. And that's fine. Like, I think that's okay, but it's still a little to no synergy kind of thing for me. It's like such specific use case scenarios that are so edge case related that, like, why would I bother trying to use the power to like, why would I bother interacting with these perks at all for the power? Like, they would be some complete afterthought for me whenever I'm using this killer. Also because the killer just feels like ass to play right now. I really do hope that they change some of the collision things that they've done, because he feels so sluggish now overall. But that's a little rant that doesn't pertain to this video at all, and we'll just go ahead and go into the next killer, which is the Knight. The Knight has Nowhere to Hide, Hex, Face the Darkness, and Hubris. And I think that Nowhere to Hide is a perk, and Face the Darkness are both perks that actually work really nicely for him, because Nowhere to Hide, okay, you kick a generator and you can find survivors nearby. And if there's multiple ones of them, you can send a guard out onto them immediately, and then you can chase the other one down as you do with the Knight. Or you can even make a pincer attack with your guards and make 4 survivors into a very unwinnable situation at the end of the day. Now, I'm not very good at this yet, but that's something that I can think is a good use case scenario for the Knight, in the sense that you can chase multiple people at once, and you can get really good value out of getting nearby information with your guards very quickly. Face the Darkness also works out nicely, because if a survivor doesn't know how to outrun your guard, you injure them from a distance away, and then your perk is activated, and every 25 seconds, which is kind of like a global timer, it just checks, are you in the terror radius every 25 seconds? If you're not, you scream. And so, because Face the Darkness gives you information across the map that also allows the Knight to retain information and send guards after people who might be across the map, and therefore it gives him that sort of macro control that the character is working for. Also, you can defend totems with it. If somebody's on your Face the Darkness totem, you go and you place a guard on that totem, and then that guard is able to defend the totem for you, which is also a really nice feature overall. So I think that it's a killer that can actually get benefit from both of those perks in that way, although they are kind of like edge cases in a sense. Like, I think when I think of good synergy, I think of what is something that this killer can instantly use and get value out of, and does it actually work with every part of their power. And I can't say that Nowhere to Hide or Face the Darkness are ones that always work, because survivors can outrun the guards. Nowhere to Hide, you might just find one person and then you just chase them normally anyway, and that's not something that benefits the use of the power itself. So there's like a little bit here and there, but again, this is going to be another entry into the some synergy tier. But Hubris is one that has little synergy with the Knight, because you're probably, when you're chasing somebody, you probably have Karn effects available. And because you have Karn effects available and somebody drops a pallet in front of you, you're likely not to get stunned, and you're just going to use Karn effects to break that pallet. Now, I think that maybe the only way that this really works out is if you intentionally get stunned, then you use Karn effects on the pallet after the stun goes through, and then that person is exposed for a little bit longer, and you can chase them down with an M1 quickly thereafter. But I don't think you're getting stunned at pallets often enough with the Knight because of your ability to just chew through them anyway, and that allows you to just chase people. You just use Karn effects, you don't care about getting stunned by pallets, and you don't really have locations where you're getting stunned very often. And if you do get stunned very often, and you're not using Karn effects, or you're not using your guards to break the pallets anyway, like, what are really the odds that you can actually use this power to its effectiveness? I mean, maybe you block the pallet with the jailer to break the pallet after you get stunned, so that the survivor gets caught on the other side of it and you get the stun. Like, there's a weird niche use case there, but I don't, yeah, I can't really say that that's something that's beneficial to the Knight or the way that he generally plays, or that you generally want to play this killer. So that is my opinion on that. I'm going to keep him in some synergy. Next up, we have the Skull Merchant, who has Thwack, Leverage, and Game Afoot. None of these synergize at all with Skull Merchant, but they're not detrimental per se. I mean, maybe Game Afoot's kind of okay, because you can stack the haste effect, although you can do less of that now because of diminishing returns. But You tag a survivor with your drone, and then if they happen to be the obsession and you happen to get an M1 on them and you were in the chase for the longest time and you make them the obsession, and then you break a pallet, then sure, Game of Foot can give you the haste effect necessary to catch survivors on top of the hindered effect from the drones in case they get tagged multiple times and you're actually using your drones properly, which I don't. I was very bad with this killer when I was trying to figure her out again, because I haven't played Skull Merchant in quite some time, but I don't know, Game of Foot maybe like kind of works with the power because of the hindering effect from the drone if you use it properly, and maybe if you're chasing the obsession, and maybe if you get an M1 on somebody that has the highest chase time to make them the obsession, and then you can keep up with the haste afterwards. It's like, it's a whole bunch of maybes and possiblies and could be's. And if you look at the other parts of her build, or of her perks as well, leverage isn't something that she benefits from directly herself. I don't think that this is something that her power really likes to see. It's not a bad effect, although I'm sad that it was nerfed from 50% for 30 seconds to 30% for 60 seconds, because again, healing perks are pretty problematic, and this is emblematic of those changes and how difficult it is to do anti-healing things. And the Skull Merchant doesn't really have like blatant anti-healing combinations that she wants. I think the Oni actually likes leverage better than the Skull Merchant does, because it just slows down healing under hook. And even then, if you're healing under hook, I think you're just playing the game wrong. On top of that, if somebody has Resurgence, this perk doesn't do anything anyway, so who cares? At the end of the day, it's a perk strength thing. But for the way that Skull Merchant plays, I don't think that this is a perk that she works well with either. And Thwack is like, again, it's a good perk. It's something that gives you information, and you refill tokens whenever you hook somebody. That's cool. Does it do anything else past that? Does it work with her power? I don't really think so. I don't see this having a combination with the way that you can use the drones, outside of being like, okay, well, I have Game of Foot and leverage available, so therefore if I'm chasing the obsession and I have Game of Foot on them, and I kick this, then I can thwack to find out what direction they're running if they're going to try and stealth to go behind this wall, and then I gain the haste, and I also see their aura. At this point, it's just creating a lot of extra use cases. It's creating a lot of exceptions for the power that don't really need to exist anyway. Now you have the Singularity, who has genetic limits, forced hesitation, and machine learning. This is also another little to no synergy for me, because I think that the Singularity getting genetic limits hits, okay, sure, fine, you stop people from getting exhaustion, but I think the Singularity uniquely does not care about exhaustion perks nearly as much as the rest of the cast. And my reasoning for that isn't just because you have the spent oxygen tank add-on that gets people exhausted when you slipstream them, but it additionally is... Singularity is a killer that is like, oh, you're running away with Sprint Burst. Okay, well, let me slipstream and teleport to you. And then now your Sprint Burst just does nothing because I've just made all that distance back immediately. I mean, really, you're like, okay, cool, I've countered Dead Hard in the future, if it's ever in my future while I'm in the middle of this chase. But at that point, you know, the Singularity is like, okay, well, I don't care so much about that. The only character that I really see that actually likes genetic limits is the Spirit, and that's because when she applies genetic limits on somebody, they can't have Iron Will anymore, so they can't counter her directly. But even then, like Singularity, like, okay, sure, genetic limits, you get exhaust on somebody that you've M1'd. It doesn't, it is not a high consequence sort of perk for him, or like it's not one that really works with the power directly. And the fact that there's an add-on in here as well, I know I wouldn't say that it would detriment its synergy, but it's like, I don't know, you could just take spent oxygen tank and put something else better in its place, and that's what I feel about that. And then machine learning, like, sure, getting undetectable and haste is really nice. I mean, haste is great on Singularity. We even see that with Rapid Brutality being one of his more preferred perks overall. And being able to defend a generator and kick it, and knowing where your pressure is if you're setting up cameras correctly, and getting undetectable once that generator gets completed. Like, yeah, there's something to be said there, but is Singularity a character that benefits from all parts of machine learning? Is that something that his power really likes to do? I don't think so. I think Singularity benefits more from slowdown effects, like Weeping Wounds, Dying Light. What was the other? There was another perk in there earlier. Leverage. Like, Leverage would be another one that would be really good for Singularity, in the sense that, okay, well, since they're trying to heal under hook, I can just prevent that from happening after the anti-camp slowdown on the cameras goes down, and that makes it harder for survivors to do things afterwards. So you can have like a global kind of pressure and slowdown. So machine learning is like kind of an odd duck in here. It's not bad. I think Singularity likes the haste. I think the undetectable is also very helpful in terms of being able to hide his aura and red stain around tighter chase loops, but it's not something that's like, oh yeah, the power really likes working with this together. That moves us up to the Xenomorph. The Xenomorph, oh man, I don't know what to think about these, really. I mean, the power is I can move across the map really quickly, and then I tag you with my tail attack. And in that sense, I think that Rapid Brutality is both a really good perk and a really bad perk for the Xenomorph, because Rapid Brutality makes it so you can't gain Bloodlust, but maybe the Xenomorph is fine with that, because you're just getting your tail attacks up all the time. And because you're getting your tail attacks up all the time, then you're not really worried about losing Bloodlust. And if you're getting an M1 because somebody's too close for you to tail strike them, then you get the haste, and you can chase them down really easily afterwards, and then make it more of a threat with the tail attack. But then because it requires you to M1, you're not getting a whole lot of value, because your tail attacks are the ones that are what you're aiming to get more often than M1s. Like, it just feels like more of a win more perk on this killer specifically. Even if it's a killer that benefits from the no haste sort of thing, I think it's something that'll be better on like Deathslinger, or I've even had the use of it on Chucky, because you M1 somebody and then chase him down with a faster version of Slice and Dice. But I don't know, Rapid Brutality is a weird one for Xenomorph. I'd say it's like some synergy in there. Alien Instinct is something that you can get good synergy on, because you are able to get so many consecutive injuries with the tail strike attack, and are able to keep multiple people injured. So if somebody is being a little bit careless with their healing, or they aren't able to get healed quickly, or you're facing a lot of like really altruistic people, which allows you to get multiple tail strikes within a certain very short amount of time, and then you hook somebody and you see their aura from a distance away, you're then able to act on that by moving across the map, by going in through the tunnels, and yeah. Since Xenomorph is a killer that can spread injuries and have at least one person injured otherwise pretty much at all times, and then you make them oblivious, and then you're also able to track them down, and you have the power that gives you increased mobility across the map that you can then use to act on the information that you've given yourself. The Xenomorph is a killer that actually works decently well with Alien Instinct. I think that's a perk that actually works well for them. Then Ultimate Weapon is a weird one. Ultimate Weapon makes it so that all survivors scream within a 40-meter terror radius. Is that right? Yeah, 40 meters. Or 36. It's pretty decently high now, because they did buff it recently, or not too long ago. And the Xenomorph being able to find survivors right away and immediately start on chase because they've screamed within a certain radius of you, and then they get blindness so they can't see the auras of any of the turrets they've placed down, is kind of nice. It's actually like a nice effect for the Xenomorph. So as much as I'm kind of like wishy-washy on the way that Rapid Brutality interacts with the power, I think the Ultimate Weapon hiding the auras of turrets and Alien Instinct giving you that kind of cross-map information off of a killer that can chain a lot of injuries together puts her up in good synergy. It's not like incredible, but I think it's actually better than a lot of the killers that are down beneath her here. Then we have the good guy, who has batteries included, friends till the end, and Hex 2 can play. So batteries included gives you increased haste every time a generator is completed, which also increases the haste that you can get while you are dashing with the good guy, and that's kind of okay. That's all right. It's kind of whatever. I don't think that Chucky is a killer that is jumping for joy at having greater mobility in some ways. I mean, kind of makes Slice and Dice a little bit more deadly, kind of makes him a little bit more deadly by being able to play a little more stealthy, and as small as he is overall. But is it a power that or a perk that you're like, yeah, that's something that Slice and Dice loves to use every single time? I don't think so. I think it's something that does kind of work with him, but it's not like, you know, like Xenomorph can chain injuries into Alien Instinct to sneak up on survivors. Chucky, on the other hand, is like, oh, I lost a generator, but now I guess I'm slightly faster when I use Slice and Dice. There's just not... It feels antithetical to the design of the killer in some ways to have that perk in there. Friends Till the End as well. Being an exposed effect is part of the detriment for this effect, or part of the detriment for this perk, because again, with Chucky, I'm getting M2 hits way more than I'm getting M1 hits overall compared to a lot of other killers. Again, like a Demogorgon, it's probably like a 60-40, even like 70-30 split. But because I'm getting M2 hits more regularly and I'm not getting M1 hits, the exposed effect from Friends Till the End is something that doesn't really work well with them. And if the obsession happens to be on the other side of the map, or the obsession selected is somebody that's on the other side of the map, Chucky doesn't have the mobility necessary to capitalize on the information that he gains from using this perk all the time. So it's like, it's kind of whatever. It's like a middle of the road information perk for him. I think a killer that really benefits from this is either the Cenobite or the Spirit, because the exposed effect of the information is a lot more deadly when they have it in their hands specifically. I think that Chucky tends to benefit more from things like status effects. I think Genetic Limits is actually a perk that he can really use quite nicely. I think that things like Dissolution might also be a nice effect, because by the time that he uses his Slice and Dice, he's going to be out of stealth for a few seconds, and so he makes those pallet locations even more deadly, because now you have to try and break them. And if you can't break them, well, it's just kind of tough luck, because you fucked with the Chuck. And then we're finally getting around to Hex 2 can play. Hex 2 can play activates after you get stunned at a pallet twice or blinded twice. And, yeah, how often does that happen with Chucky? I don't know, decently often, I guess, because of the way that his power works. Sometimes it glitches out, and you think that you're going to go underneath the pallet before it drops, but no, it drops a split second too soon, and you get stunned, but then you can follow up with the damage anyway, because it blinds that person. But I don't know. Maybe the distance that survivors can't make makes it so that following up with a Slice and Dice actually becomes a lot easier. So maybe there's some stuff to be said there. But I feel like I'm creating so many exceptions for this. I feel like because Friends Till the End doesn't give you the exposed effect, and because you can't really follow up... Sorry, there's like a weird smudge on my screen. But because you can't really follow up on the exposed and the information quite as readily as a lot of other killers that might be able to make more use out of his perks, I'm gonna begrudgingly put him in little to no synergy. I could see him being in some, and I'm gonna put him up one tier actually in some synergy, because Batteries Included isn't a bad effect. Friends Till the End is still information. Hex 2 can play can still activate because of the way that Chucky plays in general, so it's not bad. It's not terrible. I'm going to keep him up here, but I can't say that I'm like, yeah, he's got good synergy, or that there's like one perk that stands above the rest. It's that every perk has some idea of being able to be capable with them. It's nothing much beyond that. Then we have the Unknown, who has Undone, Unforeseen, and Unbound. Man, how do you even begin to start with this one? I feel like the Unknown doesn't really love a lot of these perks. The one that he probably loves it loves the most is probably Unforeseen, because you get to kick a generator with Unforeseen, and then you become undetectable as you teleport across the map to an unsuspecting survivor on the other side of the map. Whoa, crazy! You might not be able to hear the Unknown coming for you because they're undetectable now. It's cool. It's a fine effect. Again, it feels like a Batteries Included situation where there is something that this killer can use in its power, and being able to instantaneously relocate across the map to then become undetectable after you've kicked a generator there is something to be said for how good that perk can be. Is it something that the Unknown gets the most use out of? I don't think so. I don't think the Unknown has the capability for stealth quite as much as other killers, especially because of how loud it is and all that sort of thing, but maybe there's something to be said about that perk working with the instantaneous mobility if you have good information. But if you don't have the teleport up and available, then you're just kind of walking around as a stealthy killer, and it's not quite as impactful as some people might think. So that leads us to Unbound and Undone. Unbound makes it so that whenever a survivor is injured, if you vault within the next 30 seconds, you gain 7% haste. You vault a window and get to catch up to M1 them a little bit faster. It's not great. I think Wesker actually gets better use out of this. I think Legion... Can Wesker even use this anymore, actually? I don't think he can. Legion was a character that got better use out of this when it wasn't patched out for them either. I think even Chucky would get better use out of this because of your scamper ability and the increased haste that you would get after resetting the duration of Slice and Dice. And the Unknown... I can't say that I see the Unknown vaulting very often. I can't even say that I see the Unknown getting injuries very often because of how they're the harmless. So Unforeseen does get decent value. Unbound doesn't really get value. And then Undone just does nothing because this perk is so bad. It works off of skill checks, and Doctor is the only skill check character in the game. And even then the Doctor doesn't like this perk because it's just so incredibly terrible. I'm not even going to bother really talking about Undone. I'm not going to bother saying that it synergizes at all with the power for the Unknown. I'm just going to say it's bad. Most everything has little to no synergy with the Unknown. Aside from Unforeseen, maybe the instantaneous teleport with undetectable effects might be okay, but that's only if you get lucky to find somebody that's over there anyway. Yeah, that's how I'm feeling about that one. The Lich has Dark Arrogance, Languid Touch, and Weave Attunement. This is just one that I'm going to put immediately into little to no synergy. The only exception that I can really think about is Dark Arrogance, because even though you are a killer that can deal with pallets and you can hit people from range, or you can kind of manipulate the skeletons to go along the ground if you're using the elevation difference, the Lich himself is not a killer that really... the Lich himself is a killer that cannot deal with windows, and Dark Arrogance allows him to vault through windows 25% faster. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's a neat little buffer for his power, but it's kind of like Freddy, right? Like, Fire Up lets him vault through windows faster because windows are kind of a weakness. Oh, this also lets you vault through windows faster because windows are kind of a weakness, but it's still like little to no synergy in that way. Dark Arrogance or Languid Touch, giving the exhausted effect whenever a crow is startled nearby you by a survivor. It's like, okay, sure, you can do that, I guess, but the thing about that specifically is that doesn't really benefit the Lich. I think that the Spirit is one that really likes it because it deactivates Iron Will whenever somebody scares a crow nearby. Or if there were other crow-related perks that were in here, or if there was something that this killer actually did with crows, then sure, Languid Touch would be something. I think Languid Touch also pairs really well in a funny way with Overwhelming Presence, but that perk isn't in here. It's kind of just sitting out on its own, and Languid Touch doesn't have any sort of inherent synergy with the way that the Lich is played. Like, sure, you can throw an orb and you have the Withering Staff of Withering, and that gives people exhausted anyway. So again, like, why would you ever run this perk on this killer? Because it doesn't work with his power at all. And then Weave Attunement is weird. It doesn't work on magic items because you can't really take magic items off anyway unless you swap them out for other ones. And it makes it so that survivors drop items automatically and you see their aura and then they become oblivious when they pick up a new item. And I think that Weave Attunement is good for information. You can see, like, oh, there's somebody over there, let me use my fly to go towards them, but it's not something that inherently benefits the killer. It's just a perk working on its own, very much like Overwhelming Presence, where it's just a perk that kind of does its own thing. And it's not something that the Lich is like, yeah, that's something that works with my power directly. So I guess, like, Dark Arrogance is really the only thing that makes up for the weaknesses in the kit that doesn't really extend out beyond that. Next we have the Dark Lord, who has Dominance, Hex Wretched Fate, and Human Greed. Dominance and Human Greed are actually two perks that I think that the Dark Lord can pair really well with, particularly because of his mobility. being able to understand, oh, somebody's over on that hex or on that chest, and having the mobility in bat form to go and punish anybody who's over in that location is secretly underrated. And the same goes for Human Greed, where within 8 meters the survivors have their auras revealed. Within 8 meters of a chest, the survivors have their auras revealed, and so getting that kind of cross-map information, again, because of a killer with high mobility, is something that he can really nicely benefit from. It is a combination of perks that, or a pairing of perks, but not paired together, but a pair of perks, that make the Dark Lord a lot stronger than... that make the Dark Lord's power combine with these perks a lot better than some of the other ones that could be out there. And I think really it just does come down to, oh, I can bat form and I can teleport over there, and I am just immediately gaining information off of the locations of these people overall. So I think it's like not a bad combination, or not a bad pair of perks for the Dark Lord because of that. But Hex Wretched Fate, it's a perk that detriments the obsession after a generator gets done. I mean, yes, you can say that the Dark Lord is good at defending Hex perks, and yes, the passive slowdown is nice, but it's another situation where that passive slowdown would only be really amplified by like other passive slowdown in the kit, so Singularity EMPs, Onryo tapes, that sort of thing. And the Dark Lord just doesn't have that. So you have Dominance and Human Greed kind of working for him, but past that, it's just whatever. I'm going to say that that's actually like little to no synergy, because it only works with 1/3 of his power in the bat form, in the mobility. And so I'm going to say that he's just kind of down here because the perks are just like, they're just kind of there. They're just kind of whatever overall. Next up, we have the Houndmaster, whose perks do not synergize particularly well with her at all. I would say that there's little to no synergy. At least there's no anti-synergy here, and I'm just going to get that out right away. No Quarter makes it so that if you are self-healing, you are phased with continuous skill checks after you reach 75% self-healing. And then if you miss these skill checks, you become broken for a little bit. Now, technically speaking, if you know where somebody is healing and you interrupt them with Snug, then yay, they're broken and they don't complete their heal. But that's if you interrupt them and if they're self-healing. And survivors tend to heal each other more than they tend to heal themselves. So, this perk does nothing. And it's already a bad perk to begin with. Like, No Quarter's already bad enough as it is. And so just having a killer that can't, again, benefit from skill checks just makes it like, it's so terrible. Like, No Quarter is such a bad perk overall. All Shaking Thunder she does kind of get synergy with, because at the end of the day, the Houndmaster is mostly an M1 killer. But does she activate this very often? Does she always get value out of it? Not really. I don't think that lunges are crucial to... In fact, out of all the M1 killers in the game, I think the Houndmaster is the one that needs extended lunges the least, because Snug holds survivors in place for so long that you don't get value out of this. Like, if the survivor is being held in place by Snug, then you can just walk up and tap them anyway with a regular lunge, or you can just tap them and say, like, okay, that was close enough. All Shaking Thunder does nothing. There is nothing for Houndmaster in that regard, because she's the character that probably benefits the least out of any M1 killer from an extended lunge because of how long the dog... I'm just repeating myself at this point, but I wanted to repeat myself for the sake of emphasis, I guess. And then Jagged Compass might be her best perk overall in terms of synergy with her power. You hook a survivor on a Scourge Hook, and then you get to know, oh, let me send Snug over to that generator that has the most progress on it. And so you just Snug, run out to that generator, and then you get to that generator and you interrupt it, and then you go and you chase people. That's decent. You know, it's a decent little tool that you have at your disposal. But I think that Houndmaster actually really likes Discordance more, because if two survivors are working on a generator simultaneously, then you can mark two of them with Snug, and then you can chase two of them. And you can even see in the background footage that I'm using for this video, I try to tunnel somebody out, and I am using Snug to pull the survivors away from each other so that they're not able to body block for each other quite as easily. So, Scourge Hook Jagged Compass kind of does what Discordance does, but a little bit more targeted, but it does require you to get hooks at the end of the day. So it's like, it's not something that she is totally qualified to say, like, I'm the best killer at using this. but being able to get that information and getting snug onto the generator saves a little bit of the synergy here. Past that, I don't think her perks really work well with her, and even then Jagged Compass is like a nice effect that she can use, and it's mostly just there to pair with other Scourge hooks anyway. Now we have the Ghoul, who has Forever Entwined, Hex Nothing But Misery, and None Are Free. I think that these do have some synergy. I could even put it up in good, and there's a very reasonable explanation for this. So, the Ghoul being able to get injuries quickly, initially, allows him to stack Forever Entwined very quickly. So you get those faster hooks, and when you get faster pickups and faster hooks, that means that you can get back on the map and make use out of the enraged tokens to dash around the map and get more injuries and keep snowballing yourself out more quickly. So because Forever Entwined saves you a ton of time as this killer, I think that Kaneki is actually a pretty good benefactor of his own unique perks. So that's why I'm going to say that that's already some synergy there. Now you're wondering, okay, well, what about None Are Free? Like, nobody runs this perk, it's really bad. Thing is that if you're having a bad game with Kaneki, None Are Free blocks all window and upright pallet locations. If you get to the end game and you're having a bad game, but you have a couple of hooks already, the None Are Free basically just speed runs the game for you, because now you can catch up to survivors super quickly and you don't have to worry about them vaulting windows or dropping pallets on you, because now you can just vault at them, injure, and then after you get the injury, you can then vault again and re-injure them again, because now they have no obstacles to play around. They have no way of being able to deny your ability to hit them. So it actually really catapults your endgame potency quite a bit in case you were having a rough early game. And even if you weren't having a rough early game and you actually just have an endgame build anyway, like None Are Free, Hex Noed, and then something like Remember Me, or any other kind of late game slowdown effect, No Way Out being another one in here. You just kind of block out the entire end game. Kaneki is in a position where he can uniquely make really good use out of this perk, because, okay, well, pallets used to kind of weaken me by removing my tokens, but now that I can't have pallets dropped on me in the end game, I can just sweep the game out from underneath its feet and win it overall. The only perk that really doesn't work particularly well with his power is Hex Nothing But Misery, because you have to get 8 basic attacks in order to activate it. Killers that activate this easier are Singularity and the Clown, because they're guaranteed to get basic attacks, because that's just how their power works. And Kaneki, using that dash and then tag attack where you gain enraged or, bite somebody, that does not count as a basic attack. And so because half of your injuries are probably going to be using that dash attack in order to reset the enraged duration, Hex Nothing But Misery doesn't activate fast enough on this killer, because you just don't have the ability to make good use out of it. It's not that it's bad. If you do end up getting a bunch of M1s, which you will, because Kaneki has to down people with M1s anyway, being able to slow survivors down when you cancel power and then M1 them is so much worse than it actually sounds. After you have your enraged tokens, of course, but it does take you a little bit longer to activate it, so it's not great. It's not a fantastic perk on him, but at least gives him a little bit of an edge. So I'm going to put him up here in some synergy, because even though there are exceptions that I can make for him, and it's still like much more clear examples in my mind of how he can utilize his own perks better than the killers in the tiers below him. Next up, we have the Animatronic, who has Haywire, Help Wanted, and Phantom Fear. This almost has anti-synergy. I kind of want to put him in anti-synergy, and I think I will actually put him in anti-synergy. So, the way that Phantom Fear works is that if a survivor is in your terror radius and is looking at you, it will activate and reveal their location. Half of the time, with the Rabbit, with Animatronic, with Springtrap, you either have an axe embedded into somebody, and so they're oblivious, and so Phantom Fear doesn't do anything, or if you're coming out of a security door, you have 20 seconds of undetectable, and so Phantom Fear doesn't activate anyway. It does help you with finding people in the endgame, for sure, and it does kind of help you if somebody's like holding a check spot, and you want to try and throw an axe, and do like a crazy little, like over the top hit, over the top of an obstacle kind of thing. But I think that I think that Phantom Fear kind of has anti-synergy because of the capability to go into undetectable mode. And also, I don't like Phantom Fear. Like, personally speaking, I don't like Phantom Fear because 8 times out of 10 when I'm using the perk, the survivor that I am already actively chasing is the one who screams, and then it goes on a 60-second cooldown. So there's no point to this perk. And if you're playing Springtrap and you're teleporting around the map and you have undetectable anyway, survivors aren't going to activate Phantom Fear unless they're like one of the last survivors remaining, at which point like, okay, well, I'll just find you anyway. I didn't have a whole lot of difficulty in the game that I played finding survivors either. I forgot to change my scratch mark color, so I did have troubles like tracking them sometimes. But anyway, Phantom Fear has anti-synergy with Springtrap because of the undetectable effect and because you can grant survivors Oblivious, which takes them out of your terror radius, so they don't activate Phantom Fear. And if I knew where survivors were anyway, it wasn't like I was getting great use out of this perk to begin with. And then that leads us to Help Wanted, which increases the speed of your successful basic attacks by 25% if the generator that you kicked gets completed. It increases your attack speed, or your successful basic attack cooldown, for 60 seconds by 25%. Springtrap likes to use his M2 in combination with his M1, but also quite often when you're getting into chase, the best combination is to go for the M2 hit and then grab somebody with the axe. Now, there is a little bit to be said here about if you kick the right gen and it gets completed, and then you M1 somebody and get that basic attack cooldown, you're able to follow up with an axe a lot quicker than survivors might anticipate. And I think, like, yeah, okay, that's like a good use case scenario, but how often is that really happening? Like, how often are you actually leading with a basic attack ahead of actually just using a regular axe hit? I don't think that use happens very often. And so therefore, anti-synergy. I just don't think that the Springtrap really likes Help Wanted as a perk because of how his perks are designed. It's like 50-50 with basic attacks and axe hits. Then you have Haywire. Haywire does nothing. It is a useless perk. That is all I gotta really say about it. Because it's a useless perk, it doesn't have anything that would save the synergy, and so therefore Springtrap goes into anti-synergy. Next up, we have the Krazoo. The Krazoo also has anti-synergy. And the reason I'm saying this is because 2 of her perks, Overture of Doom and Wandering Eye, are basically useless for her. Basically useless. Overture of Doom sets a hex on the map, and then the furthest generator away from that hex is marked. If anybody works on that marked generator, she gains undetectable for 30 seconds, and her terror radius transfers to that generator. So, like, in what scenario are you really happy to be undetectable with the Krazoo? Because she's such an incredibly loud killer overall, and she's a very tall killer when she's in head form. When she's in body form, she, spits and does that like loud kind of screaming sound, and then when she's in head form, she, makes all these like kind of gurgling loud noises and can be seen over obstacles just because of how damn tall her model is. So undetectable it's not something that really benefits her power directly. It's not like the Hillbilly who benefits from Tinkerer, or I don't know, the Plague being able to sneak up on people more easily with Corrupt Purge when she has undetectable from Dark Devotion and adding chaos to the mix. Or even the Unknown, who I put in little to no synergy, being able to teleport somewhere, even though the teleport is extremely loud, and getting value out of Unforeseen. I just don't think that the Krazoo is a character that really loves undetectable because of the way that her power works. If anybody runs an undetectable build on Krazoo, it's because they're trying to run the build. It's not because it's like, oh, it's really good for the Krazoo's power. And then you have Ravenous, which has anti-synergy, because if you hook 4 survivors, then the next 60 seconds they're all exposed and you get information on them because they scream. I actually did get a kill because of this perk in this game, and I was able to use it, but it's not because of the power. It was because of where the survivor was relative to me when I hooked the last person, and I happened to get the M1 down on them at the end of the day. And because of the way that her power works with the intestinal whip attack, she doesn't really benefit from Ravenous, because you're already 2-tapping survivors when they are leeched, so And because it's considered a special attack, then, okay, well, you don't get Ravenous value at all. The only thing that you can really say the Ravenous is benefited by is the Scream effect that reveals everyone's locations, and so you can go into head form, and then you go fly over to where somebody is, and then you go back into body form, and then you get an M1 off of that. But wouldn't it just be simpler to play Krazu normally? You just go into body form again, you spin on them, and then you turn into head form and 2-tap them anyway. Because at least with that, you have the range and the ability to scamper over pallets, and you have the mobility, which you don't get with body form, comparatively speaking, which would require you to be in so you can get value out of Ravenous. It's just not a good perk for Krazu, and I think it has anti-synergy because of its exposed requirement. And finally, we have Wandering Eye, where when you chase a survivor, all other injured survivors within X number of meters are revealed to you. This is such a bad perk. I don't think that Krazu is like, oh yes, now I get to see all the other injured survivors nearby me without actually knowing where they already are because of her tall model that's able to see over obstacles in third person, or because she's already spit on them, or because they're already injured. To begin with, because of how quickly she can get injuries. It's not a perk that does anything. And I'm going to just say that Krazu has anti-synergy because her other perks are so bad, and then Ravenous itself just doesn't work with the way that her power is designed. And then finally, the first, who has Hex, Hive Mind, Turn Back the Clock, and Secret Project. I think that these perks really genuinely have great synergy with the killer. Well, actually, I'm going to put it down in good synergy, and I have a specific reason for this. So Hive Mind tells you where generators are being worked on, and because you're a killer that has an AoE ranged attack, you can just be like, okay, cool, let me just throw a hit over there, and maybe I can tag somebody with my World Breaker tokens, and occasionally you do, and that's pretty cool. Being able to get information on where to travel to using your undergate traveling effect is underrated. Having that mobility and also having the ranged AoE attack and also all of these sort of like little things here and there makes it so that he has really good synergy because of his mobility. He can execute on information that he has across the map and also is able to tag people really nicely with his power. So it's good. It's a good perk. Turn Back the Clock isn't one that like necessarily benefits him more than anybody. I think that being able to kick a generator from a distance and then retain a chase immediately afterwards is good on a lot of killers, and Henry is one of them that also benefits from that because you can break a gen and also hit somebody with the World Breaker tokens right away immediately afterwards, and that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool effect. I think Deathslinger gets better use out of it because it doesn't slow him down quite as much. I think Chucky gets better use out of it because he can break a gen and then immediately start a chase with somebody with the dash attack. I don't think that the first is like somebody that is the best user of it because of how quickly he gets injuries anyway, but it still helps him out a lot and helps him maintain pressure quite a bit. Now we know that Hex perks are also really good for this killer because of how World Breaker works, because of that time requirement and forcing survivors to do something else. But again, the secondary quest thing, slowdown perks that have passive effects, that have percentage effects, would be better than trying to run Turn Back the Clock in this specific scenario. And then Secret Project. Getting Undetectable on Henry, I found, was so incredibly powerful. I ran the add-on that gave me Undetectable when I tagged somebody with my power, and if I broke line of sight, sometimes I found survivors were just running right back into me, and so I was able to get M1s really quickly, and then I was able to follow up with M2s shortly afterwards as well. So Undetectable is something that this killer really likes, especially because of how quiet he is. With that being said, I do also think that Secret Project, or that Undetectable, is not an effect that he always gets good use out of, because when he's in the Undergate anyway, he doesn't have a terror radius to begin with. So when you're in mobility, it's not the greatest thing, but when you're actually chasing somebody and you're undetectable and they can't find you around a line of sight and they just kind of run into you, this killer becomes so much more powerful. So even though there isn't really great synergy with the Undergate attack or with the Undergate traveling, necessarily speaking, I still think that Secret Project and giving Undetectable to a killer whose power requires you to understand where he is at all times lest you get hit by multiple Stinging Vines attacks still makes him have some pretty darn good synergy overall. Better than a lot of the killers down below. because the use case scenarios for them were a little bit more niche or not quite as like well realized, but I think that Henry actually works with his perks quite decently well. And that is all for the Teachable Killer perk synergy tier list. If you like this video, leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that sort of good stuff. And if you dislike the video, then that's bad synergy. We're just going to have to put you at the bottom of the tier list. But in any case, thanks for watching. Safe travels. Bye-bye.